Hey, John, it's 5:30. Are you and Kenji ready to go? Okay. Is Trustee Cole on already? All right, very good. All right, good evening, everyone. It is 5:30, and I am going to call to order the Oshtemo Charter Township regular board meeting of March 24th, 2026, and I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And next, I will call for remote location identification for remote attendance when permitted by statute. Trustee Cole, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
And you are sharing that your participation is permitted per the remote location by the rules that guide that?
That is correct. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm also driving.
Okay. Okay. So, to share with the board and those in attendance and who watch this later, remote location is permitted by what, please, Attorney Porter?
The state attorney general has basically indicated that if somebody has some type of disability or need to be away for medical reason, that it's permissible to allow them to join remotely under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I'll let Jim decide. I've been at the University of Michigan Kellogg Eye Center all day, and I had just left Clark Pharmacy there, a compounding pharmacy, so I'm driving back. But I've been in Ann Arbor all day for medical reasons, so I'll let Jim decide if I can vote or not.
Clarify, please, Attorney Porter?
I think in this case, she's out for a medical reason, even though she's not here, she was out for medical reason. I think she would be allowed to participate, allowed to vote.
All right, thank you, Attorney Porter. Next, we'll move to item 4, which is a time for a member of this body to share a township mission, vision, or core value, and we have a core value.
I'll read the core value. Leverage new technologies and ways of doing business to increase accessibility and improve services.
Thank you, Trustee Ford. Relevant to our discussion later, I think. All right, next we have item 5, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have any members here present wishing to make any changes to the agenda? I have 1 or 2, but they're actually items. So would we change text in an item during approval of the agenda? It doesn't change the agenda, Attorney Porter.
Are you actually adding a different item or just in addition to an existing?
Just text changes within an item. So, for example, the budget amendment for the fire department, a text change with regard to the general ledger number that's recorded?
I don't think that's
Okay.
needs to
Okay.
change the agenda.
Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Is there anyone else wishing to make any changes to the agenda?
No, but I'll move approval of the agenda as presented on the website.
Support.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you're
Yes.
giving me this look. I'm
Oh.
like, what the heck, you know?
I'm like, we didn't change the agenda, like going through my brain. Okay, I have a motion by trustee Sikora. Do I have a second for approval of the agenda? Thank you, Treasurer Bushka. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, trustee Cole. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we move to item 6, which is public officials and community partner updates. And as a reminder for the board, although Attorney Porter is not an elected member of the board, he is also recognized as an official of the board. Am I correct on that
That's
statement?
correct.
So, Attorney Porter, you have a spot on the agenda, so I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to take this time to publicly apologize to Trustee Chapman for my comments made at the Planning Commission meeting of March 12th. My comments went far beyond the argument at hand, and they became personal. This was totally out of line and was completely unprofessional on my part, and I hope that Trustee Chapman will accept this apology. I'd also like to apologize to the public that was at that meeting and to the township citizens, and I'd also like to apologize to this board. I will strive to do better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Porter. Are there any other members of the public, public officials or community partner updates? I don't see our commissioner or the road commission here this evening, or our state representatives. And so at this time, I will close item 6, and we'll move to the work session. So as a reminder, in a previous board meeting, I provided some information that at my request, the fire department evaluate our burn ordinance and share information with the board. And so we have with us this evening our Assistant Fire Marshal Scott Fuller, as well as Fire Marshal Wiley, who's in the audience. Are you going to stay in the audience? Okay, very good. Okay, very good.
Is it? Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening. I'm Scott Fuller. I'm the captain of Community Risk Reduction and the Assistant Fire Marshal. And as the supervisor previously stated, she asked that we take a look into our open burning section of our burn ordinance. So our burn ordinance is very encompassing of all types of burning. Our central focus tonight is the open burning portion. We're going to go over what that is and what our rules entail, and mostly actually what they don't entail. So the objectives of my presentation, I'm going to define open burning. We don't have a definition of open burning. A lot of our neighbors, other agencies, the state and the federal government all have their versions that are pretty commensurate with each other. So we'll touch on those. I'm going to address a state law regarding open burning, then our existing ordinance. We're going to look at our neighbors. Very often when we're trying to see where we stand in appropriateness, we look to see what our neighbors are doing. There's a lot of similarities to the west, and there's a lot of similarities to the east in jurisdictions that we can learn from. We're going to look at example jurisdictions, and then we're going to compare our burn data regarding burn permits and complaints regarding open burning. And then we're going to discuss a few options. I'm not here to make any kind of proposal. I'm just discussing certain options that are on the table. And then we can discuss alternatives. So open burning, like I said, we do not have a definition on the books, but EGLE So that's Michigan's version of the EPA. That's the Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. The burning of unwanted materials such as paper, trees, brush, leaves, grass, and other debris where smoke and other emissions are released directly into the air. During open burning, air pollutants do not pass through a chimney or stack. Our burning ordinance has other subsections on incinerators, waste burners, and wood burners. Again, this is open burning, and that's Eagle's definition. EPA, you'll notice the definition is quite similar. City of Kalamazoo goes as far as saying a fire made from any combustible waste matter or flammable material of any type or kind, including but not limited to wood, trees, branches, wood chips, compressed wood, or other wood products, which is kindled and maintained in whole, in part, in the open air. So again, another one hitting on open air. City of Portage, fire made by any combustible waste material, flammable material, or rubbish, including leaves and paper, which fire is kindled and maintained in whole or in part in the open air. So again, it's undefined by the Township of Oshtemo and our neighbors to the south, to the north, and to the east, all lack a definition of it. I didn't include it, or I did, sorry. Our adopted fire code, section 202, gives a definition that's pretty much in line with what Eagle and EPA have published. I didn't dive into which one came first, but they're clearly copying each other. So the scope of our discussion is only open burning. I know there's lots of concern that we're going to address recreational fire. This topic has been under discussion for a few months, and a lot of people fear we're going to come after campfires. So we will not address recreational burning in this evening. So that's campfires and cooking fires. Again, we're discussing open air burning. That's not a recreational sense. So our state law, and this all stemmed from, we are very fortunate to have lots of growth here in Oshtemo. We have lots of development happening. One of the common ways of handling clearing of land is burning of the debris that is cleared. Instead of hauling it out and having it disposed off-site, developers are burning it. So they're burning large piles in areas being developed that are in proximity to residential areas, which has led to a significant increase in complaints. The fire department's handled burn complaints for years, and we'll address those, but they've increased. They either come through ordinance enforcement, the supervisor's office, walk-ins, or phone calls or emails. So that increase in the last couple of months, due to the fortunate development, led to us diving into it. And diving into it, I discovered the state law, Act 451 of 1954, also a Michigan compiled law 324-11539. And if you have a digital copy of this presentation, that blue line there, that's a hyperlink, so it'll take you directly to the Michigan law. In short, open burning in the state of Michigan is banned per state law, unless you have a jurisdiction of 7,500 people, which Oshtemo does, and we adopt an ordinance that strictly allows open burning. So we have an ordinance that allows open burning against the guidelines of the state. And then there's some subsections and other administrative rules that dive into a few more particulars. No need to bore the public here with that. But one thing that our ordinance actually cannot allow is we cannot issue, and here's the administrative rule, we can't issue open burning permits to any property within 1,400 feet of an incorporated city or village. So I can tell you historically, in my almost 13 years of being here, issued burn permits to plenty of homes along Drake Road. They burn just like everyone else. Well, according to state law, we're not compliant with that law. They're well within 1,400 feet of an incorporated city. So to me, this was entirely eye-opening. So, like I said, burning is banned by rule in the state of Michigan. Oshtemo makes exception for it with our ordinance number 617. And then there's no exception for burning within 1,400 feet of a city or a village. And This is our current ordinance. Open burning of brush, vegetation, grass clippings, or leaves is permitted within Oshtemo Charter Township. One of the issues that we have is it's not exactly a prescriptive ordinance. It doesn't restrict everything. It gives open-ended permissions to the fire code official, the fire chief, or the fire marshal in his stead. Does give us material, time, and atmospheric restrictions, but it lets that time and atmospheric restriction left up to the chief. So it's up to us to figure out, are the winds too high, is it too dry? We take guidance from the state on we're allowing or disallowing burning at that time, but there's no exact restrictions. And I'll talk about an example later that some jurisdictions limit it seasonally. Material is restricted to what it says, but some of those words might be open to interpretation, and that's not cause for alarm, but it's one of the point of contentions with our issue at hand. We have no limit to the size. We do have a clause in there that if the pile is of a certain size, it needs to be a certain distance from a house. So if it becomes a 3-foot by 3-foot pile, it needs to be 50 feet away from a structure. Okay. If it's a 1,000 foot by 1,000 foot pile, it only needs to be 50 feet away from a structure. So at the end of the day, we do need to address some of the issues that limit that, and I had a proposal to have a prescriptive distance based off the pile size. But again, not here to make proposals, it's just letting you know there are options that we can go for. But there's no explicit permission nor explicit prohibition of trees or logs. So we say brush, vegetation, grass clippings, or leaves. So if you had a very strict interpretation of our ordinance, you would say it does not say tree branches or logs, which is what's being done in commercial burning. Commercial burning is an unofficial term. It's what we internally are using for this land clearing. When a contractor wants to burn massive piles to clear out the land, but it's not an official term. We can make it an official term, but tonight, commercial burning is referring to that land clearing. It's been handled as an internal process at Oshtemo. So a developer calls and they want to check, hey, what do I have to do? They end up pulling the same burn permit that any of our residents would pull at their home. And that's not quite within the spirit of the ordinance, right? So, like I said, residential versus commercial, not explicitly defined in any legal documents. It's just our common nomenclature that we use internally. So a residential would be what we think is a small open burn on an R-zone property. So a resident wants to burn their leaves, their grass clippings, brush from a fallen tree. To us, that's residential burning. Commercial, like I said, is the hired excavation or large piles used typically for land clearing, which we're seeing a significant increase in recently. Here's a table. I like everything graphically presented. So I took our jurisdiction and I lined it up with all of our neighboring jurisdictions and a few other comparatives. And this, I read their permit policy, I read their ordinance, I spoke directly with their fire code officials. Some of these jurisdictions, that is just their chief. I discussed with them what the residential versus the commercial or recreational. Again, we're not addressing recreational, we're always going to allow campfires. So here on this table, you'll see yellow indicates that it's permitted, but it has to be via a permit process. Orange, it is prohibited. No ifs, ands, or buts. It just is not allowed. And then green is permit-free, so that's our recreational fires. So I would like to point out our neighbor to the east, Kalamazoo Township, their fire marshal, Todd Kowalski. He was part of one of our small sessions, and he's more than happy to come and discuss it to the board further. They recently went from being similar to us and allowing open burning, and then 2018, 2019, they moved towards a complete ban. They still allow recreational fires, permit-free, anyone can go have a campfire. The cities of Portage and Kalamazoo, they prohibit pretty much everything, and then you have to get a permit and a on-site inspection by the city to have recreational fires. So they go a little bit more strict on the recreational, and then To our west, we have Antwerp, Almena, and Pine Grove Township. I was able to find plenty of information from Antwerp and Pine Grove. Almena doesn't have much information published on their website and did not make contact with any of their code officials. I placed Texas and Comstock on there. They're similar in size and development and layout of their jurisdiction. So they permit residential burning, but they call out, we're restricting the size of the limbs to 4 inches or 6 inches. So here's a visual representation of all of that. Red, it's prohibited. We're right there in the middle. Unfortunately, like I said, I was not able to find published information from Almena Township. But as you can see, outside of Pine Grove Township, everyone's more restrictive than Oshtemo in some form for open burning. So one of the points that needs to be addressed is what is brush versus these trees. So our ordinance allows the brush to be burned, but we don't define it. So what are some common definitions of brush? So are trees and stumps, are those brush or not? Portage ordinance, brush means trimmings from trees and or shrubs. They define it in their ordinance. Texas and Comstock explicitly state tree limbs not exceeding 4 or 6 inches. So they're purposely calling out parts of trees. The city of Marshall lists trees, leaves, stumps, and brush as prohibited items. Grand Haven Township, they list trees and brush and limbs. So they're using different words to mean different things. So they're not using brush to include trees and limbs. So it's my opinion that brush, which is used in our ordinance, does not mean trees. So some data on our open burning. I was able to pull permit data from May 2012 to July of 2025. This comes from our website that we use to issue burn permits. So we have just shy of 5,000 days worth of data of who's pulling a permit. It's 18,703 open burning permits were issued. It comes out to just under 4 per day. So I would like to remind you that not everyone who burns obtains a permit, whether knowingly or not. And then not all permits were necessarily needed. Very often people thought that they had needed a permit for that recreational campfire. So our tools were online, so they'd get that, and it doesn't say, hey, you don't need one. They just get it, and there's no harm in that. So out of those 18,000, no telling if it's just a recreational campfire. The permit does not indicate the size of the pile, so we have no idea what pile size people are burning. It could be 2 foot, it could be 3 foot, or as we see along West Main and some other developments, it could be 40 feet. Here's a graph of the number of permits pulled. As you can see, the outstanding number there is usually 1 or 2. However, the horizontal axis there, the x-axis, goes all the way up to 200 because we do have some residents pulling over 200 permits. So I box plotted it all here so you can see the mean is much lower, but we do have people who burn often.
Do you have any, I guess I'll wait because I want to
Okay.
talk about my question is based on those residents that are pulling high number of permits, can we talk about geographical location, but maybe you'll get to that, so.
Yep, and just 2 more slides. So here is when burn permits are issued. I pulled this data and I separated it by when because not to spoil things, but Grand Haven Township only allows burning in certain months. They don't allow burning in the month that is outstanding to us. So top 100 addresses that we have issued burn permits for, listed here. Again, you like the geographical visualization, working with our GIS to plot that on a map, a heat map of areas. So unofficially, you could separate Oshtemo into a more dense area versus a less dense area, and talking with lots of my coworkers and actually other professionals, what is that line? And so again, unofficial, we see 8th Street as the division between a more dense population and a less dense population. So when I use 8th Street, just a north-south line through the township, regardless if the road is there, the next slide is addresses west of 8th Street are highlighted yellow out of the top 100. without having a map and GIS completed, this is the best way I could visualize where are these burn permits happening. It's predominantly, so 71% are west of 8th Street in our more rural area.
Can I ask a question before you move past that?
Yeah.
This is a very descriptive slide. With those addresses that are pulling a lot of burn permits, I mean, there's one thing, like, they know the rule and they're pulling the permit if they're going to burn. Do we have any information, does the fire department make sure that, I mean, I could also see this being someone who's perhaps getting paid to burn stuff on their property, and they know the rules, so they pull the permit. So I just wonder if there's, do we do any kind of checks on that?
As far as I know, we don't have a mechanism to know
Yeah.
the intent of the burning. So it's
Right.
something that can be addressed, and then we could put it on our permit form. Doesn't mean it's going to be filled out honestly. So with a lot of burning, all my coworkers would chuckle that we get a few complaints. It's quite often. Now, not all unauthorized burning gets a complaint. There's lots of people who burn, they either willingly or unknowingly didn't get a permit, and they're burning, and no complaint ever happens. And on the flip side, not all complaints that we receive and we address are due to unauthorized burning. Our ordinance allows the fire department to terminate any kind of burning if it is a conflict with anyone. It's pretty open-ended, and it's a great power to wield. One person says, hey, my neighbor is burning leaves, I don't like the smell. Our ordinance says we're expected to terminate that burning. I can tell you anecdotally, over the years, that mechanism has been abused by residents targeting other residents because of personal disputes. So I remember years ago when I moved in my house, my neighbor asked me how I felt about burning. This was prior to him knowing my role. And I said, I'm all for it. He's like, okay, because the previous resident, every time one of them would burn, they would call the fire department, knowing the fire department would come shut it down as long as they said, I don't like it. Right or wrong, it does happen. And our guys are busy enough running emergency calls to be pulled out and do that, because we address every burn complaint with a fire truck, because eventually if it needs to be shut down, a lot of times that water in that truck is needed to actually extinguish the fire. Also, not everyone who's disgruntled complains. I know plenty of people who just don't like the burning, but they're not willing to make the phone call, lodge the complaint online, or they just don't want to ruffle feathers. But there's a lot of people who've expressed displeasure in other people burning. And then, unfortunately, not all complaints have been recorded properly over the years. We've not had an excellent mechanism for recording these complaints. Like I mentioned earlier, complaints can come via walk-in, phone call. They can call 911 and we get dispatched for it. It go through ordinance enforcement. It can go through the supervisor's office. Any of the members at the front desk have dealt with someone calling or coming in to address a complaint. And a lot of times the complaint is, hey, my neighbor over the weekend was burning. Unfortunately, we can't pursue any action on someone based off of there is a burned pile that's burnt. We have to see it happening in action for it to be admissible early in court. It's hard to stand on a leg and say, yeah, there's evidence you were burning leaves, but if I don't see it happening, I'm not going to pursue that. That's just a dangerous game. So the data for our complaints is from 2010 to today. And as I mentioned, there's no great mechanism for recording it. Our record management system has changed. I'm on the third record management system in my career, and data doesn't always get transferred. One of them didn't even have the ability to lodge a complaint. A lot of them are really focused on those. Did the call come from the dispatch? It's recorded. Everything else, there might not be a great module for it. Our current RMS stated that they have a module in development, but that could be a salesman's promise. So complaints, we have NFIRS, that's our National Fire Incident Record Management System. That's actually been replaced in the last year, nationwide new system. That's also getting a module. So I imagine the national standard module is pairing up with our RMS producers module. There was no great way to necessarily record a complaint. Everything gets coded, so you'll see 3-digit numbers there. So we could code something as a 911 as a citizen complaint. Since 2010, we fielded 252 of those. You see one says 233 for ER and 19 for FD. Those are 2 different RMSs. I had to go into archive data, pull them out, and pair them together to get that number. A lot of times, we'll code something as authorized burning. And someone calls and says, hey, my neighbor, there's smoke in their backyard, I don't like it. We go out, we have to record it some way. Our guys would record that as it was authorized burning, but we have to record it as data somehow. And then there's unauthorized burning. A lot of times we go out, speak with the homeowner, hey, you have to have a burn permit, you can keep going, or if it's out of the realm of the ordinance, we have it shut down. So since 2010, we only have 794 documented dispatches for complaint. Now these are dispatch. These are things that went through the 911 system. Again, we didn't do a great job of documenting phone calls, walk-ins, emails, face-to-face with another government official. And then law enforcement, they address a lot of complaints too.
Can I pause you for one
Yeah.
sec? Trustee Cole has her hand raised. Can we let her in?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
First of all, wonderful presentation, and I mean, the slides and everything, when I was reviewing the packet, I was like, wow, this is a lot of information, but you did a really nice job of laying it out in a way that was really easy to understand, and I really appreciate that. You were really, really thorough. I had a couple questions. One of them you already answered, so I was going to ask, are we sending a fire truck to every one of these complaints? And is there a way we could do that differently? I mean, could a county dep be going to the complaint if they determine that it's, an illegal burn or against the ordinance, or once we get one? I mean, couldn't they just say, hey, put your fire out with a garden hose, versus having a fire truck run every single time and only calling for the fire truck if it's necessary? And then my other question is the biggest concern here a fire that just gets out of control outside of the boundaries of where it was intended to be? And if so, how many of those, and I apologize, I'm driving, so I can't review the slides again, but if so, how many of those have we had where a fire has actually gotten out of control that the fire department had to come out and literally put out of an out of control fire?
Yep. To address the first item, in terms of dispatching a fire truck each time, that's just been the standing order. And as for as long as I know, and I don't know if there's any intention to change it. It's something that can be explored, but sometimes we can get away with having a brush truck, so one of our pickup trucks with tanks of water, but we always want a way to be able to extinguish it. Now, a nature of a lot of the complaints that cause for us to dispatch is someone has a very large pile that seems to be out of control. It's unattended, or it's close to other combustible items. A lot of them are unattended. People will burn their leaves or the brush and just walk away. If we find that, we're extinguishing it. And a lot of times it's deep on the property, so we need extended hoses, or it's a very large pile and a garden hose is not going to cut it. So that addresses that. Second item, I don't know about having a sheriff's deputy en route to take a look at it or have them assess it. I understand they're busy, and contrary to popular belief, I have no pull with the sheriff's office and how they operate. And then third item, outside fires, is the upcoming topic of the presentation here. So I will address fires that do get out of control. So outside fires, before I continue, did that answer the first 2 questions?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just think, I understand the county, sheriff's department, they're obviously busy too. I just wonder if there's, it seems very expensive to be rolling out a fire truck to every one of these, but I don't know, maybe we can look at alternative options, down the road. But yeah, thank you. And you're getting to the next one, so thanks.
Absolutely. Like, again, I'm not here to make any proposals on how we change our operations or the township ordinance. It's for information. You guys form an opinion or a directive to give to us, and we will explore further. So outside fires, that is a grass, brush, or woodland or wildland fires. That's what our record management system defines them. That's what the national standard defines them all as. Common causes for an outside fire, a lot of times unknown. We show up, there's a fire, we were called to it, we don't know the origin. Other times we find downed wires, we know shortly following a electrical event, so like a lightning storm. Down power lines can cause fires. Mechanical failure doesn't happen here very much anymore, but along the train tracks, train brakes can cause spread of fire. Also car brakes, on occasion we get spots of grass fires on 131. And then there's the human cause with reckless disposal of open flames, so cigarettes or charcoal. A lot of times we see people disposing spent charcoal that's not truly cooled, and then it causes it. And then the last one is also human, it's open burning. There are times that we respond for control burn. Some residents, kudos to them, they say, I messed up, I walked away, or it just got out of control, it was too windy, so be it. And there's other times that it's pretty obvious that someone had a pile that they were burning, they were no longer attending it, and then now the neighborhood is on fire. So what happens when we have those incidences? It's not being documented regarding that open burning. So it is coded for the higher degree of incident. As I showed you those codes earlier, the new record system, the numbers are gone, but the nature of coding things is still there. It just uses plain speak. But like I said, so someone has an open burn, it gets out of control, burns an acre, burns 40 acres. We respond, it gets coded as an outside fire. We'd have to go into those narratives from our firefighters if they even knew the origin of it. And the record management system doesn't have a way to pull through and filter those out. If it's an unauthorized burn and turns into a brush fire, it gets documented as a brush fire. We lose that data about it being an unauthorized burn. That new record system that the federal government pushed out does have the ability to track all that information, but that started January 1st, right? So data set is much, much, much smaller than everything we do have. So through 2010 through 2022, we've had 231 documented outside fires. So this does not include a trash can's on fire or dumpsters on fire. There is greenery that has been burning 2023 through today. Now, this data, I apologize, ends last October when I first published this. We'd had 38. It comes out to 18.4 outside fires per year. So, next section, I want to address some example jurisdictions. The first one is our neighbors to the east, Kalamazoo Township. Their population, fairly similar. However, that they are much more dense. It's a smaller land mass with the same amount of people. They have 844 housing units per square mile. 2018, they adopted a full ban on open burning. However, they also have a single service waste pickup. They allow 3 large yard waste pickups per year. And they have weekly curbside bins too for their yard waste. So they gave an alternative to their residents. So instead of burning, hey, we're going to work on picking up your yard waste for you. Another example is Grand Haven Township. As you can see on this map, they separated out, similar to how I view Oshtemo is there's an urban area and then there's a rural area. And they adopted their ordinance to address the 2 different areas. So in the urban area, residents are allowed 1 permit per year to burn. In the rural area, it doubles. Ooh, you get 2. So they do address a few items that I think we need to address. One being the material burned is on the site it originated from. So we do have where, hey, my father-in-law lives out in the woods. I'm going to ship all my tree branches out to you, and then you're going to burn it. Or people have small businesses that they're doing this. So they're burning much more often in much larger piles, much denser materials for a longer time. And as it stands, our ordinance allows that. Grand Haven Township, permits have to be obtained in person. That way they can verify that the person is acknowledging the restrictions in the burn permit. Our mechanism is online, so someone could just blindly scroll to the bottom. I'm sure everyone here reads the terms of services for everything they ever acknowledge. So they scroll on down, hit acknowledge, and go. They might not be reading the rules. And we see that a lot. We'll respond to a burn, and they say, I have a permit. I'm like, well, then why are you doing this, this, and this? It says you can't. Well, I didn't read it. So options. I'm not here to make proposals. Like I said, I originally my presentation said proposals, but I figured options was a better term. Again, this is for the board to take direction and turn around and give us direction. So option one is a full ban. Just, it's really easy to administrate, right? Just, you don't have to pick and choose who gets what and what you can burn and when and where. It's just done. Option two, a partial ban. You can do it by districts. However you want to do that, define it by either neighborhood or plats. Option three, commercial ban. So we do need to address some things in our ordinance, but if any, you could always just target a commercial ban, as I said earlier, for like the land clearing, and it'd be an administrative rule to do such. Option four is just rule revision. We can address the time, the seasons, the size, and the frequency. If you put a limit on the pile, a 10-foot pile, no one's going to do land clearing with 10-foot piles. It wouldn't be worth their time. They just would never get done. So they would see that rule and choose logging and shipping it out. Option five is do nothing. Like I said, no option is being proposed or recommended today. I'm just here to present information. And I went through and I detailed some of the examples of those few options. They're in the packet. I don't feel the need to describe each one to you. So open for questions.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great presentation. And so this got rolling because we do have significant parcels that are being cleared due to commercial development, particularly, you know, I would say 8th Street's even a more westerly boundary. 9th might even be better. It was surprised me, well, first of all, we got a number of complaints due to developers who were clearing land, and they were in higher density neighborhoods. And so we were hearing from the residents in that area. And then, and then in conversation with Attorney Porter, just kind of learning more about what was and wasn't permissible. So Oshtemo Fire Department, along with Attorney Porter and the township, did talk to some of these commercial developers about this open burning. And one of them that I can think of made a change in the way that they did the burn, but it didn't eliminate the burn. And I was surprised to learn that some communities require developers to chip and haul out what they create on site. So that's kind of the beginning of how we got to where this is. And the fire department and Scott put together this presentation. We pulled a small group internally that included professional staff and residents and other fire professionals to just kind of take a look. And I was stunned at the fact that our burn it ordinance was so lenient compared to our neighbors. And I wasn't expecting an answer tonight, but I think before we can bring this back for more board discussion in the future, but before we spend any more time from the fire department or Attorney Porter's office, we should have a discussion of, you know, the options that are Mr. Fuller put before us, or if anybody else has got another idea. I just think if, you know, I just wanted to, you know, in our mission is environmental stewardship. And, you know, open burning to me on 40-acre lots I'm not sure I'm seeing that's environmental stewardship. So, but others are free, to disagree with me on that, but I'll pause. Thank you for all the work that you put into this, and do any members of the board have any questions for Mr. Fuller?
I do.
Yes, sir.
How do you define recreational versus residential? So a campfire, somebody hypothetically could say, I'm having a campfire, but it be exceedingly large. How do you differentiate that?
So the fire code and our ordinance, recreational fires are still open, because again, open burning is anything that doesn't go through a chimney or a stack. So yes, a campfire is open burning, but we're explicitly excluding that. The rule is it in some kind of container? Is it protected? And is it based off of the size? What's the nature? Our ordinance even talks about, is it used for relaxation, spiritual, ceremonial purposes? It's a tricky situation, because we could show up and someone could have a 12-foot pile of wood and say, here's my package of hot dogs. It's recreational. So, again, like I said, the only thing I would highly recommend is we do address and put some prescriptive methods in there to kind of control these things. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got one.
Yep, go ahead,
Regarding
Zach.
the state law kind of bans the 1,400 feet from the city and village, so
Yep.
Can we stop issuing permits to residents right away so that they don't violate the law unintentionally? Or do you need an ordinance change from this board?
So, yeah, we should stop issuing that, but unfortunately, we don't have the technological mechanism to really do that. We don't have the ability to restrict certain people from applying online for a burn permit. Now, nothing in our ordinance says that we have to offer it online. We could overnight say, you have to come in, and then we look at your address and say yes or no.
So nobody's reviewing those permits?
Nobody's,
They're just
yeah,
kinda like
because we
auto-approved or
allow them,
whatever? Yeah.
people can pull them in the middle of the night.
Makes sense. Okay. I think that would be a priority. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to be issuing permits to residents to violate state law. Should probably figure out a way to prevent that from happening going forward. I don't have strong opinions about this one way or the other. I think environmentally, combusting things unnecessarily doesn't make a lot of sense. I know we got a lot of agriculture out west too. Burning on site makes a lot of sense. So open to the conversation. I'd like to see changes in tightening this up, but no strong feelings one way or another.
Madam Supervisor, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Scott, when you did your research, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but aren't there provisions within the state law, though, that do allow agricultural burns? And should we address that in this ordinance as well?
Yeah,
Because I know there are certain
Yep, and our.
requirements, it's
Yeah.
necessary sometimes for ag purposes.
Correct. And our burning ordinance has multiple subsections, and agricultural burning is one.
Okay.
Not opposite, but outside of open burning. So agricultural burns are already addressed in our ordinance and, for lack of a better word, like protected via that ordinance. It's understood that agricultural at times is needed, like such as prairie burning or orchard burning. So.
Thanks. Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Sikora?
Yes, thank you. Excellent information. I really appreciate that, the way you put it together, and it's very informative, especially the comparison with surrounding municipalities, because, the smoke doesn't stop at,
Correct.
the road or whatever kind of thing, and, we're all interconnected in that way. Being a little into data, it was kind of surprising to see how certain residents had so many permits. Now, in your permit chart, was that over so many years, like the ones where you put like
Yeah,
yellow?
so there's an address in there with 202 permits, which
Right.
seems astounding, but it's from 2010 to today. And
Okay.
again, that could be multiple homeowners over the years, and someone getting a permit is, to me, inherently a good thing. They're following the rules, they're acknowledging that there's a system that they're following and trying to be safe about it. So the high number isn't concerning to me, it's just to show more. There's a lot of burning happening in certain areas versus others.
Yeah, at first look, and that's why
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify how long this is, I
Yep.
thought, well, this person has 2 acres and they've had 207 permits. It's like, they
Yeah.
must be bringing in stuff from somewhere else, because you can't generate that
Right.
much in their
And
property.
again, it could be someone
like,
who's under the belief that they need a burn permit to have a recreational fire. They want to have a campfire with some marshmallows and hot dogs, they might be pulling a burn permit. I only catch that if someone calls and asks for a burn permit, and I say, okay, what are you burning? And they're like, oh, we're just having a campfire tonight. I'm like, oh, you don't even need a burn permit. And they hang up immediately.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think having the data is one thing, but it's very easy to misinterpret it.
Correct.
By, looking at some of these numbers and addresses and
Yeah.
thinking, what's going on, are they running a
Yep.
business there that they're hauling everything home
Yeah.
from their business and
Yep.
burning this in their yard, and they're calling it and getting a permit, and that's fine, because nobody asked where it came from, or, that sort of thing. So I really think it's important that, when people see this, that they understand
Yeah.
what the data is really representing
Yep.
and stuff. The issues with like K Township where, they swapped out having pickup,
Yep.
versus burning, and there's some areas that are more concentrated of people, houses close by, having a big, burn thing, because, trees, limbs fall
Yeah.
down, and, older trees and stuff. I could understand that in that area, but they provided them with an alternative method of getting rid of them, so.
Yep.
I'm interested in having more of the conversation, if it ends up being something like the no firearms discharge thing, where it's a certain part, or it's, certain size lot, or acreage, or whatever, wherever that all goes, but having the conversation, I think, would be very worthwhile. And after that, we can get to leaf blowers making
Yep.
all their noise too. Anyway.
And I definitely feel that's a decision that needs to come from you as representatives of the citizens, so.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that information. And, we'll bring it back for further conversation. Maybe we can dig into these options and a little bit more and kind of discuss, obviously, different areas of our community, right, we don't exactly look like Kalamazoo Township, right? But we kind of do in some areas, and so, do we treat different areas differently? But, again, I just think it's worth looking into, and certainly maybe adding some definitions to our ordinance makes sense at a bare minimum, like, so. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for your work, Scott and Mr. Wiley, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Wiley, sorry, and providing that. Next, it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium our Meeting Communications Manager, Rich Blair, who is here to provide a presentation regarding some identity guidelines that he's been working on to kind of help us move forward in establishing that identity that we've discussed in the past. Who are we?
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. Let's see. One of the first things that I tackled, or one of the first things that I did when I came on board with the township last July was make a list of what I wanted to get accomplished over the next year. One of those things, one of the big goals was to really develop the township identity, our voice, our tone, and strengthen those standards to create some consistency across different, modes of communication. So this is the first step in that process. So this guide is intended for internal staff. As we go through, you'll see there are a number of things that would be used for designers or printers. It's really just quick access for things as well. So some of these slides I'll go through a little bit quickly, just because it's for awareness, and some we can dive in a little bit deeper. So as we decide what our identity is, one of the first things that we have to do is decide who we are. So who are we? As Oshtemo, like, who are we? So at a glance, we are just west of the city of Kalamazoo, nearly 24,000 residents, a lot of longtime residents, neighbors, young families, seniors. We have a very large student population. Our proximity to WMU, K College, and KVCC, it drives a lot of opportunity here, but we have a high share of young adults. We have about twice the state average for age between 20 and 24. We have a very strong regional connection as well, growing business community, and then we manage all of our growth as best we can through thoughtful planning, prioritizing safety, preserving as many natural areas as possible, and opportunities for recreation. So as we dive in, deciding who we are was a big part of the process. And then second, as we communicate, we need to define our audience. Like, who are we talking to? It makes a big difference in how we communicate. So our primary audience is obviously our residents. They come first in everything. It's interesting that the residents are evenly split between renters and homeowners, nearly evenly split. It's been that way for decades in Oshtemo. Renters are made up of students, a lot of working families, and a lot of senior citizens, most of which have lived in the township for more than 5 years. That's interesting. We're not a transient community. Once people move here, they tend to stay. The homeowner population has become a little bit more diverse over the years, and our average owner-occupied home value, when this study was done, I want to say it was 2024, was $240,000 roughly. The median household income is $58,000, and just less than a third, about 30% of our households are senior citizens. The secondary audience are retail establishments, restaurants and restaurant groups, and business owners as well. So, why does it matter that we have an identity? Why do we need this consistency across these different channels? It's really important because it builds trust. You become credible when you see that repetition. The township becomes recognizable. If you see something coming from the township, you recognize the logo, the colors, the font, you recognize all of that, and you immediately have a little bit of trust in that because it's familiar. Clear communication, community identity, pride in the township, that's really important to me. I moved here 11 years ago, and I really love Oshtemo. It enhances economic development by presenting a polished image to those retailers, those restaurant groups that we'd really like to come. When we polled the residents, we do a survey, more retail, more restaurants, that's always on the list. So we want to make sure that we're presenting ourselves as the type of township that those groups will want to come to. Consistency across departments, like I'd said. And it does save time and money once you have everything in place. It's an investment of time to get it, to create it, and then it saves time and money with templates for signage and for documents, and everything just comes along a lot more efficiently once these are in place. So, once we get into that messaging, one of the most important things is our voice. What is the township voice? This is divided into 3 different categories, and each one of those represents something. The first one, labeled structure, is how we operate, how we present ourselves. And fiscally responsible, professional, fair, these you will see, these mimic in a large way the core values as well. The second column, community, that's how we want our community to feel when we interact with them. So welcoming, sustainable, service-driven. That third category is what we prioritize in our work. We're innovative, we have integrity, and we really like to engage with the citizens. So with that tone and voice, I chose this as an example to show how we use that with some social media best practices. And this is one of those areas that I really chose to dive into with kind of tidying this up is improvements in social media. It was done great before, I'm not saying anything poor about anyone else, but this was a way that I thought we could engage with our residents at a higher rate. So again, best practices, define that audience, and then what is your goal? Is it to inform the residents? Is it to promote events? Is it to encourage participation? Like what is our goal? the right platforms. Facebook and Nextdoor are for like general announcements. Instagram is much more visual. Identity standards, that's really just to be consistent, which carries some weight. Posting guidelines, those they vary from platform to platform, and I won't get wordy with it, but if you use the right size images, you optimize those images so they're a smaller file size, they show up in the algorithm more. Just knowing the little ways to actually get your message out is important. Post when the followers are active, so per platform that varies. And then analytics, track those KPIs, and then use that data to get better and to reach more people. So then you get into the visual part of our identity, and we have primary logo and secondary logos. So the primary logo, I don't know how many years ago this was updated, but whoever did it, I think did a great job. The more I dove into this, the more I was impressed, and it's a really nice tool in our toolbox. It's really cheerful. I like the green, orange, and yellow. The yellow and orange symbolize the sun, and the green symbolizes nature and agriculture in the township, and those were taken from what I received. I didn't make that up, and it sounded great to me. And then the bottom is really just that little logo with the extra circles to show you where the spacing should be so you don't crowd our logo. So this is in here really for the staff as well. File types, I know we get moving quick, and then when do you use a PDF, a JPEG, or a PNG, and if you need a vector file, those things all are in the guidelines. Just most common and when to use them. This is another one in the visual identity, just to map out what our colors look like. And those codes, this really helps the process when we're working with a sign vendor or creating any kind of designing any kind of a tool. And if staff members or anyone wants to use the right green for the text in what they're creating, they have access to this as well. So that's really just for awareness. Just a quick reference. Typography, this is another one I think that whoever did this previously did a really nice job. Montserrat, Semavold, and Proxima Nova, those two, they work really, really well together. They create a nice hierarchy, and they guide your eye to what we want people to read so they can find what they're looking for quickly. And then there are, those are Adobe fonts. You can't always find them. So it is a frustration when the font's not available in Windows, so Calibri is just the easy default there. It's amazing how many people have that question, and it's just a relief to know what that backup is. So this, excuse me, the staff will use these in a number of different ways. This is, once this is, we're all comfortable with this, then these documents and forms will be put together. A lot of them are in process, it won't take long. But this is just a list of some examples that we started on quickly. Letterhead, memos, PowerPoint, invoice, fax cover sheets. It's interesting talking about technology and moving forward and getting consistent. We still list, fax cover sheets. It's ironic.
We had a full conversation about whether or not we need a fax cover sheet.
But they do get used.
Occasionally.
Yep. Another thing the staff will get an upgrade. This looks like a 2027 project, but business cards, this was really fun to put some different versions of that together. We'll probably unclutter that, tidy it up a little bit. It has a lot of numbers. Don't know that we need that many. But we really wanted to modernize it and use more of our colors, more of our personality. Same thing with email signature. We want to make sure that we're using the right colors. And to be consistent, there were so many variations of email signatures, and it's just something that when you have one buttoned up look, it really does help the way you're viewed. So a lot of variance there, we're going to fix that. I have LinkedIn profile on there, not everyone needs to do that. But if you do have a LinkedIn profile and you have our township listed on it, I will be creating the tools, the right size files for you to use for those pieces. And then lastly, I put here more to come, and then I changed my mind at the last minute to actually dive in a little bit and talk about signage. Right here, it was just signage and vehicles, more to come. But the signage project is picking up speed, and we hope to move forward with a few different things there. So I wanted to touch on an example of how these guidelines will be put to work there. Signage is a huge something that all of us are talking about, I guess I should say. So, this needs a little bit of context, because I don't mean this to shame all the hard work that was done previously. When someone sees an issue with something, they solve that problem. They design something from scratch. They do the very best that they can, and I'm sure it was always, great work. But when you do that over time, you solve problems as they come instead of having a roadmap, you get layers, and those layers create a little bit of chaos. So this little audit was done at Township Hall and Township Park. And in that little hour and a half, 26 different designs, 21 fonts, and 17 different colors. So that just says to me that we have a huge opportunity to bring all of that in, all of that together, and make some improvements so that we all align. Sorry, getting a little dry. So for that, formalize those guidelines, sign shape, logo placement, colors, font hierarchy, clarity and readability. We need our signage to do one or two things really well instead of doing a lot of things, not so well. So anyway, long story short, I have a little sneak peek of a couple of examples of a signage family, which these are not intended for Oshtemo. They were just a couple that caught our eyes. So once we get this family put together, it's going to take at least the rest of the year, to get this accomplished, and then we can slowly over time start rolling this out. My assumption is that this will be a handful of years before this is in a really good place. But if we want to eliminate all of this layering and all of this, just where it's incompatibility, then let's create our North Star, and that's what this would be, and then we can move toward that. So just a couple examples of what those families could look like. And that is it. If anyone has any questions, comments, or just have a seat, pal, that's fine too.
Thank you, Rich.
That's
Any
it's
board-
very good, thank you. Very good. Yeah. What's that?
Oh,
Oh, no, I told him to sit
trustees,
down, and then I said I was
Trustee
kidding.
Sikora, do you have any questions or comments?
So something I was going to mention in my
Sure.
trustee comments today is that we reviewed the signage for the new Fruit Belt Trail. And when we had our discussion about that, since it's being paid for by a grant from Consumers Energy, I believe, they had guidelines of how they wanted the sign. So, as an example, how would you work these two things together? I'm sure we wouldn't turn down the grant, but, obviously, we're not that far yet with this new system, but just kind of curious, where were we going with that, or how would you address them?
So remaining within their guide, I'm glad you chose that example, because I have been working with our Parks Director, and I showed her 3 different concepts that stayed within their guidelines, and she chose one, and I'm super happy with it. Our logo and colors become a little more prominent, so it will not match whatever our signage family is exactly, but we put enough elements in that paid for by a grant from consumers signage that there's a through line. It will connect with what we do. So everything is very intentional, but you're right, we like some grant dollars to pay for things, so we stayed within their guidelines for that. Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
All right, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so Rich put this project together, presented it, I think, first to Cemeteries, Buildings, and Grounds, and as a part of that, a baby step will be working on that entry sign here at Township Hall. That might not be the final look, but I'm hoping during budgeting, I don't think we can take it all in one foul swoop. But if we can get a signed family that we all agree on, and then we can take off chunks of the township, across the township over a few years and kind of tie all this signage together, I think that would be a good step towards, furthering to define that identity. So I think once Rich has time to work with we'll see this again when is assigned family for us to take a look at and agree upon. Okay? All right. Well, thank you all, and let's see. What time is it? 6:40. All right, so we are through our work session. It is 6:40. Why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we will pause the regular meeting and reconvene at 6:50. I didn't forget my notebook. I thought I had it with me. Angie, ready to go? All right, excellent. It is 6:52 PM, and I'm going to call this meeting back to order, and we are at item number 8, and this is the time for public comment on any items in the consent agenda or items not on the regular agenda. So I welcome you to approach the podium, introduce yourself, and share your thoughts and comments.
Hi, Katie Schneider. I live over on South Van Cal Street. As I think everybody up there knows, we are looking at having the battery energy storage system that's being proposed next door to us. I appreciate the meeting on March 12th. I feel like we all learned a lot about what was going on behind the scenes as far as the battery energy storage system ordinance goes. I think all of us were a little bit appalled to find out that that was actually being worked on in closed session. I know you guys can't answer any questions on that, but I really question why that's in a closed session. We've been told all along we're in moratorium, everything's on hold, and then we find out that, nope, there was a closed session. The board was told to follow guidance, all unbeknownst to us. We're reading in the newspaper months ago that there was going to be a committee formed, and then we very blatantly learned 2 weeks ago that, no, that was not the case. And I just need to really speak out on that. I don't know how many of you have been digging into the batteries at all on your own. Nobody? Okay. And so I really question the whole, why that can't be researched, why the time can't go into that. And then when I ask that question, I'm told, well, we're really busy. And I understand that, I really do. But I also know that there's a lot of people who do want to dig into this. Again, I don't know what was said in the closed session. I don't know why we have a closed session again on Thursday with the Planning Commission. It's my understanding that normally a closed session is something to do with an employee or a collective bargaining agreement or some sort of litigation. I know it's not normal practice for other townships to constantly have closed sessions, and especially not working on their battery energy ordinance, but from what we heard 2 weeks ago, that everybody else is doing it wrong or unlawful or something along those lines. And I just think that needs to be addressed. Again, I'm not an attorney. I don't know how the Open Meetings Act works for sure. I don't know how that can be interpreted or if it's open to interpretation. It appears to be. But that really needs to be addressed. There's a lot of people concerned about the batteries. It's not just that my house. If you look around, there's almost 400 of those battery signs out in the community. There are a lot of people concerned. There's over 1,500 people active on Facebook. They're concerned. And all of us were shocked 2 weeks ago to learn this is going on in closed session. It's being moved along in closed session. And the best answer that we've received was that soon there'll be a website that'll have an update on the moratorium. I don't think that's how a public body works, but I guess that's how closed sessions work here. We would just appreciate some transparency on this, especially as residents. If we're supposed to be doing something on our own because our board's not doing it, just be honest with us and let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Hi, I'm Rob Morrison, Oshtemo resident. I'm on Green Meadow Road, the other side of town from the batteries, or where the batteries want to be at some point. I missed the planning session on March 12th, so I just want to share some comments and thoughts, because I did watch a recording of that. First of all, about the master plan, is that one thing that I looked at was, one thing I would recommend is that, I know that we don't control the roads, but when we're going to have connected roads, and I understand the need for that, is that when you're connecting residential areas into arterial roads, you're going to need to have traffic calming measures, because that's the only way to really reduce accidents and people speeding. I lived in Chicago, and they had every type of traffic calming device within a square mile of where I lived. And I was in a very dense urban area, and there were cars that would go very, very fast down very narrow roads, with cars parked on both sides. So I saw all kinds of stuff, and even with traffic calming, there's still people who just don't get it. But that's one recommendation I have. Another is that I felt that the protection for agricultural lands really wasn't as strong. I know that this is a plan and not the enforcement as in zoning, but the place type really didn't have agricultural lands there. It's residential, rural, and we really need to provide protection to our green spaces and agricultural land, because those really are the ones that are most threatened. And once you lose them, you lose them. They're very hard to bring back. Those are just my thoughts about the master plan. I know that it's moving into the final stage. That's fine with me. The other is that I really want to reiterate my support for Trustee Chapman's suggestion that we have an energy advisory committee. And I think we really need an advisory committee to help the Planning Commission do its work, because I think that advisory committee can provide a lot of education and assist with public input, hearings, town halls, whatever is necessary, because many residents, including myself, have requested this type of advisory committee for a while now, and it's been openly discussed at public meetings, both here in the Planning Commission. And I think what we should do is take advantage of community resources. There are numerous residents I know who are researching this complex issue and can provide valuable and relevant expertise. I'm not an expert in it yet, but I understand the danger of large-scale battery systems. Also, I think the bottom line here is that we need a larger conversation and discussion around energy systems, period, which I believe is a point that Trustee Chapman made, because there's a lot in here. Battery systems are one, storage, windmills, wind power, and solar is another. They kind of put everything into PA 233, and I look at that and I say these should have been dealt with separately. And we also are working with large grid systems. And thank you. We really need to look at small scale systems versus large scale. Large scale have a lot of problems, and some of them are frankly more dangerous, and some of them shouldn't be considered together at the same time. And so that's where I think there needs to be more community discussion input, especially education, because this is a difficult issue to get your hands around. There's a lot of science in it. They're coming out with new batteries, I've been told, but I have not yet established, to my satisfaction, that they're going to be better than lithium. So there's a lot that all of us need to do, and I think that the key values that an advisory committee would support is value-conscious decision-making and also transparent governmental practices of the highest priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Evening, Board. My name is Terry, and I live on South Van Kell Street as well. And I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and Attorney Porter, I thought you did a very nice thing tonight by apologizing to Mr. Chapman, and I like your idea. We all need to be part of it in some way or another. It's our lives. I mean, I know some of you live close, some of you don't, but it's our lives. We should be able to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Good evening, Katie Meyer-Tepper. Yeah, so I did join the Environmental Concerns Committee for Kalamazoo. I'm now an associate member. I was voted in last week to do that with the board, so thanks again to Neil for suggesting that the crowd does something more than come up here and yell. So I'm part of that now. In the meeting last week, it was really refreshing to be with a group of people with environmental concerns, everybody very environmentally concerned. The big topic was the metal recycling factory that went up in flame. And so the board there voted for Kalamazoo to look further into why. One of the board members did bring up that lithium-ion batteries was a possible cause, and that was the only cause that he stated. So that's obviously going to be investigated. I brought up that they should have been doing surface sampling. The residents around the factory especially should be doing that because that's what the residents in Moss Landing did. So anyway, learning, joining that committee was awesome. I'm really excited I did it. And I really do really thank you, Dr. Chapman, for your suggestion. I wasn't here because my son was sick, but I was listening to the whole thing. And you said you wanted 2 people from the community. I think me and Rob already volunteered to do it. Obviously, we have been researching this a lot. I haven't done as much lately because of my baby and not having a babysitter when he's sick, but we'll be there. We're going to continue being here, so you might as well let us join you. It's not going to be, we can't vote, right? But we can educate. That's the whole thing. I think Rob and I have done more on the energy system education for ourselves than a lot of people. So use us. We're here. We're going to keep showing up anyway. So, might as well let us speak and join and have a voice. The whole closed system thing, I don't know much about that, but closed meetings for something like this that could have such long-term generational pollution and destruction to our families? No. The whole recall was because of a lot of the closedness and the keeping the residents out, the lack of transparency. So why push yourselves more into questions of transparency and do the closed sessions? We're watching. We're all watching. We're here. So, enough of the lack of transparency for something this important. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Hello.
Hi. My name is Christy Wolf, Oshtemo resident, and just one thing that struck me this evening as I was listening, and I thought this was quite interesting as the fire department was giving their presentation on open burn, that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't, like a resident can't have a campfire in their backyard if it's within 1,400 feet of a municipal area. But yet, these battery storage systems have a high propensity, and we're seeing that this is likely the cause of this scrap recycling, metal recycling fire that happened. Just drawing some parallels here, that if the state is saying that these systems these storage facilities can be within 300 feet of people's homes, I don't understand how a campfire has to be 1,400 feet away from a municipality or a public area, but yet we can put these massive thermal runaway, roaring potential fires within 300 feet of people's homes. And this proposed facility is going into a rural residential area, impacting the lives, the homes of so many people. And I love I can't remember his name, when he talked about the signage and the logo, and we want to be happy and cheery, and we want to be at peace and loving where we live. And Oshtemo, the orange and the yellow, the sun and the green for the agriculture, we love our homes, we love our space, please, fight for us, stand by us, support us, that's why you're here. And I continue, when I was here a couple weeks ago, to say, I'm trusting that you're gonna do the right things and you're gonna stand behind your residents, because without the 24,000 nearly residents in this community, this township, we don't need a board, we don't need a community, it is the residents that makes this community run, and we just need your support, so please stand by us.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I will close public comment and move to item number 9, which is our consent agenda, which consists this evening of the meeting minutes of the regular meeting of March 10th, employee recognition certificates, Oshtemo Township February policing reports, dispatch calls for service, by call service, and venue. And for the board members, I think normally those reports go on the township website, and you don't, I haven't been putting them on the agenda. They all get uploaded, or they don't get put in the packet, but I will, I mean, since we are going to be moving into more conversations around policing, and I'm going to start adding those, so, but you can always, anyone in the public can find those regular monthly reports on the website. And there's a search bar at the top that everything's pretty easy to find. So anyway, that being said, do we have any members of the board wishing to make changes to the consent agenda?
Yes, can we pull out C? I had a couple questions just about C. It'll be brief.
Sure. We will, we'll do it after item 13, after the second reading.
I move to approve consent agenda items A and B.
Support?
I have a motion by trustee Ford, support by trustee Sikora. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have item 10, which is discussion and consideration of a job description revision, and here to present that is our HR Director, Sarah Feaster.
Hi, good evening. Before you tonight is a recommendation for consideration of revising the job description currently titled Operations Coordinator to Operations Manager. In the memo, you can see some background on why this is before you tonight. As some additional background, this position was previously the executive assistant position, and then when we restaffed that last summer, we revised the job description to operations coordinator to have that person handling operational duties. And since staffing that in the summer last year, it's evolved into more than just coordination support. They're leading projects and taking initiative beyond just coordinating tasks that they're assigned. So what you see is the revised job description with the duties, the additional duties, and then also a budget amendment, because this would result in a compensation adjustment to a manager level position. And Sherry, if you have anything to add, I would encourage.
Yeah, first, I would like to propose that we make a text amendment. And I'm looking at the red line item number 10 that says service staff support and liaison for boards and committees, prepare agendas and meeting materials and distribute packets. To more clearly define that, I would like to propose that we approve serve as supervisor support and liaison for boards and committees, prepare agendas and meeting materials, and distribute packets, period. This position is not involved with creating formal records per se or transcribing minutes. So I'd like to propose that text amendment to item 10, serve as supervisor support and liaison for boards and committees, prepare agendas and meeting materials, and distribute packets, period. Beyond that, so we went away from administrative assistant because for those of you that haven't been around quite as long, there was actually a deputy supervisor position. And when that person left the township, which was before me, a more traditional administrative assistant was added. It became clear to me after sitting in this role for a couple of years that we had the opportunity to bring some support into my office, but also with a higher vision of somebody who could really participate in internal operations at a higher level. And David Cobb, who works with me in my office, he also supports Jody in the planning department, has done just that. Since joining the township, not only just agreeing to whatever I throw at him as far as just regular sorts of calendar items or communication. Some examples of the tasks that he's taken on is he participated and helped lead the traffic study grant application. He was brand new to the township and just jumped right in. He has improved the board agenda process and how items come into your packet tremendously, and created operations that are an understood process across all departments. He's improved, for all the department heads, how to obtain and get me contracts for signature and review. He's worked to help do interalignment, so again, back to that organizational development, working first with our building department to strengthen and improve that. We are now moving into the Parks and Maintenance Department, which involves clearly identifying roles and who's doing what, and this work is all to help us identify, me, and then bring to you, identify holes in the organization where we could be doing a better job. He led the Red Med Box initiative, which still waiting on final approval from Sheriff Fuller on that. I mean, there's just been website development, and I believe that we really captured a person with a tremendous amount of talent. I actually have almost 2 pages of, I have more than 2 pages of projects that he's taken on since being here. I believe this is an appropriate move, and that he will only continue to grow with us, and a manager position is absolutely appropriate. So I guess that's what I have to add with regard to this request.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sherry. Can you remind me, when did we create the operations coordinator position?
We hired for it in June of 2025. Our previous employee in that position, the executive assistant, left in March, I believe, so we began staffing activities around March.
Okay. We've done a organizational study. We've gotten some results from that. We've had conversations about it. I don't recall, but I don't believe that we've created an organizational roadmap of any kind.
Right.
Is that true? We don't have one of those, correct?
No, we don't. I think that would be one of the focus points for your retreat, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right to me,
Yeah.
too. Okay, and so I'm asking because what I'm seeing is a position that essentially was created about a year, maybe 2 years ago or so. It's been filled and held by an individual for less than 1 year now, and now we want to completely scrap the job description and effectively create a new one that would result in a promotion and an expansion of roles. All fine. I mean, nothing in here like jumped out at me as something like, no, this doesn't make sense, we can't have this, we shouldn't do this. But what seems odd is it seems like we're creating a role for a person without a roadmap for organizational structure. And to borrow from something that Rich had mentioned earlier about the way we make decisions over time, is without the roadmap, you get these layers that become chaos.
Yeah.
This feels chaotic to me.
Okay.
To create a role, and I'm not saying that this was yours alone or your idea, it feels like the wrong way to create job descriptions and then fill them, to me.
So
And I would like us to have a plan that says,
Yep.
we need as a township, or whatever may be, an operations manager, and the reporting role is to the board, or whatever it is. But we, as a township board, need to have that conversation about what the organizational structure is going to be. I don't think I'm comfortable making this change tonight without that conversation first.
Okay.
That's just where I'm at for the rest of the board. I think that this position makes a lot of sense, the way it's written here. I see value in this role for the township, but it feels like cart before horse at this moment in time.
Okay. I completely agree with not creating a position for a person. This is something that Sherry and I have talked about, making sure that the person that we have fits the position that we need. So that was one thing that I did bring up is organizationally, is this the direction that we want this position to go?
Sure.
It's
And-
not just about leveraging the talent of the incumbent of the
Precisely,
position.
yeah, no, that's fair. And like, I don't have a problem with the individual that's actually in question here, or the job description that's in question here. But as a board member, I feel very strongly that I would like a conversation about how does that role that's on paper in front of us fit into the reporting structure of this township? I'm not so certain that as a trustee, I want to create this role within a specific office of the township, but rather I would like it to be cross-functional and report to the township board, much in the same capacity as the attorney. So there would be a little bit of a change there. So those are my 2 cents on this, but I'm not going to be willing to move this one tonight personally. So that's just,
So the changes in the job description are to reflect the work that's actually happening. So that's part of it as well, so this position is doing far more integral and important, or not important, but far more higher level work than the original job description. And so now I get what you're saying about the stepwise process about what this looks like. And part of my thinking that when we get into the board retreat is moving towards a deputy supervisor that has a broader role, but I think that that is a stepwise process before we actually create a deputy supervisor and go out and hire one. And so that is my thought process on making this change now and moving towards a bigger role potentially in the future. So I'm not, there's no intent to replace an operations coordinator. This intent was to recognize, by making these changes in the job description and the title, the work that is actually being accomplished by that person at this time, in this role at this time.
so you're saying this would be like a net add of job positions? We'd still have a open coordinator role?
No, that's opposite of that. I wouldn't,
Okay.
it would not be a net add, no.
Yeah, I guess I just would say, like, if the person's doing far more work than we had said we need, when we created the role, then that to me is like, red flag, we didn't know what we needed.
Well-
And now I'm wondering, do we really know what we need now? Because I don't think I've had that conversation with the rest of the board, and this sounds like a superintendent role. This sounds like a role that as a trustee, I want reporting to this board. That's what this sounds like to me. And if it's a deputy supervisor role, that's fine, we can do that, but that's not how I read this role.
That is, a superintendent is not the vision for this position, and the supervisor's office needs staff support. And I can say most clearly, the person, or the staff that was supporting the supervisor previously, the level of support with the transition to this new staff person is like going from 0 to 100 miles an hour. I don't want to say anything terribly negative about, former staff or whatever, but it is like night and day for me about the ability to delegate and then have, people always say, things don't go fast enough through the supervisor's office. Well, we've been able to make some concrete moves to projects that have kind of been hanging because I have a level of support that I've not had in the past.
Okay. I mean, I can appreciate the need for the support. None of that is like wrong or like I disagree with any of the statements. But this is a process thing. I think Trustee Chapman's kind of had the same hang up before about things being introduced for the first time and voted through or whatever. It's not the same here, but this isn't just a singular decision. This is a career position. This is important to the continuity of the government here. I want to have a more holistic conversation about the organizational structure. We paid decent money to have an individual come and talk to us and do that work. And we need to decide, do we want a full-time supervisor's office, a full-time clerk, a full-time treasurer? Or do we want a superintendent or something in between? But we're kind of starting to straddle the fence here with this kind of stuff, and it doesn't feel right to me.
I can appreciate the comments that Trustee Ford has made. I had some concerns about too. I was curious, I think Supervisor Bell, you mentioned that you wanted the wording change to be for the supervisor's office, but then you also mentioned that he's been working with the planning department. Which
Right,
would not
so
be-
he does support the planning department with part of his time as well, but he doesn't take the minutes.
Right.
He
okay.
assembles the packets, sends them out, but he doesn't do the minutes or agendas. He does do the agendas and assembles the packet with myself for the township board meeting, but he is not doing that for ZBA. I mean, he assembles the packet and sends them out, but he's not putting all the words
All
on
the
paper,
pieces,
I
okay.
guess.
Okay.
So I just didn't want it to seem as if he would be doing things that's not actually happening.
Yeah, at first I thought that this was going to say, okay, you can't, the text change, whatever you want to call it, was like, okay, he's not going to be supporting the staff, but then it was like, well, but he was supporting staff too, and how do we draw the line? He's not going to do that anymore for staff?
No, he will still do that. It's
Okay.
just still under the direction of the supervisor's office.
I guess, my initial feeling was, we just created the position and give it more time because there's so much going on here. We're changing stuff, like a year, see how it works, what we need to change, what we don't need to change, what we can throw in there, how has it grown, but get some more of an analysis of, documentation of what all that has been rather than, I'm not quite sure because, we all have very limited interaction with him. So it's kind of like, okay, I think, he does a lot of things, but I'm not really familiar with them because, I'm not involved in those things. So I was going to suggest we wait a year for the position and then take a look at, okay, after a year, we'll be able to say that we want to change this or not change this, or it's working, or we want to morph it into something else. My other question, though, comes up with the funding issue. I'm not,
Take it from the clerk.
I'm wondering why is the clerk donating? And is this indicating that, if we approve this position, the person's going to get a 12-grand raise automatically? Because it's $12,000 for salary.
Yes, it would be a budget amendment for a salary adjustment. It's not exactly, it's a rounded number. And the reason that it's coming from the clerk's office is because the accountant, we budgeted for the whole year. And so we have some money in that fund that wasn't used. But yes, this would result in a compensation adjustment to a new salary band.
Yeah, I think I'd be more comfortable doing that when are we going to examine all the salaries again this year, or was that
No.
you guys? Yeah, okay.
We already did that
We
during
did that for
budgeting.
last year, okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it again in budgeting. You'll approve the
Oh, wait,
But it
salaries.
won't be.
I have a
if-
specific question.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm done.
the salary adjustment that's implied in this budget amendment, would it still be within the band of the current role?
No, this,
Okay.
changing to operations manager moves it to a new pay grade.
Okay.
Yep. Where the,
Because this is what this feels like to me as a trustee sitting up here, is it feels like I've been packaged a job description change that's really just a performance raise for someone who's doing a little bit more than what the paper says. So I don't think that's bad, but it's just, it's weird. I can't do it here tonight.
This come about at a request to be recognized by this employee for the job that they were actually performing.
So just to weigh in, I didn't know what he was telling me. Just to weigh in, it was a new position, and I guess I had an expectation that there would be some change and movement within that position, especially within the first year, as we identified ways that this employee could be as productive as possible. So I'm not surprised to see a change in the job description. I appreciate what you're saying, that we need an overall organizational structure conversation. But at the same time, I don't want to wait another year where this person's working outside of their job description, performing a job that is needed by the township and by the supervisor. I would like to get the job description updated to reflect what he's doing. I think that is still important, even though we need to have that other conversation.
But I think what Trustee Ford is saying is, there's no doubt that the supervisor's office needs the assistance and that the person is a great asset, but do we, without the conversation at the retreat, go with, okay, this person would actually be a supervisor deputy, or would this person be an operations manager that then transitions away from the supervisor's office, and if that's the way we go? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so there's the unsurety of that. And I think if we held this until, because I don't think it's very far away, I think we're scheduling for April. If we held this position and backdated it to our discussion today, if it gets moved forward, then that would be a way to kind of talk through it and progress at the same time. That's my thought.
Well, and just to throw in an additional thought is that, you know, we always put in the little phrase on job descriptions, the above statements are intended to describe the general nature and level of work being performed. They are not to be construed as an exhaustive list of all duties performed. Which if the person is doing more than what's in the job description, there's nothing wrong with that. Because the list wasn't exhaustive. It didn't include things, and we discovered them along the way that they could also, well, who needs help with this, and I can help you with that, or whatever. So all I'm saying is, you know, it's not like, well, gosh, they're violating what's written on the piece of paper, you know, so I don't have an issue with that, as we discover that they can also be helpful with this and helpful with that, and then is that something that needs to be spelled out, that they're going to do this as one of the items, or is it just falls under the, you know, the not an exhaustive list of things?
yeah.
I think there's a threshold, though, of it being a new job description, and I think that this role has reached that threshold. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
To require a new job description.
I would add to that and say, you know, yes, that statement is meant to capture these one-offs, but when the scope of work changes, and we want to make sure we're fairly recognizing and compensating our employees, and if they're performing, if the position is expected and required to perform at a higher level and do more, tasks that require a little more experience, knowledge, more so of just an administrative role. That was kind of where this came from too, was empowering the person to complete those tasks. Not the person, the position to complete those tasks. We need to recognize that role, call it the right title, and compensate appropriately. So, yes, we could all say, well, we can call everyone administrative assistants, but we can perform at high-level positions. But we want to recognize that contribution And again, making sure that it makes organizational sense for this position to move in that direction. And I will say, there is a need for operational support. There is a need for that. So this is intended to capture that, to fill that need.
What changes this role from coordinator to manager?
They're in charge of higher level projects and like running them, in charge of them. Sherry works more closely with David, on the operations coordinator, on day-to-day activities. So I do believe that it is outside the realm of just coordinating the activities of these projects. It is managing those projects and implementing rollout, training, that sort of thing. Yeah. Managing,
It sounds
if you
like
will.
an extension of the supervisor office
Yes.
in its capacity as the personnel director of the township. That sounds like a superintendent, that sounds like a township manager, that does not sound like something I can support tonight for the rest of my board.
I don't think the raise is the issue. I have no issue with the raise whatsoever. I think what's hanging up is the title. Like, I think if we had presented this as maybe a deputy supervisor, it might have made more sense, would be my guess.
I totally understand the need for the larger conversation, this organizational structure. That is something that we need to iron out, for sure, how we're going to implement that organizational study. There is a push from my office this year to make sure we have the right positions, and they are called the right things. You've seen several job descriptions come before you over the last couple of years. Revised titles, they've evolved. So I do support that larger conversation happening about the direction we want to go. I hear it. I hear you all with your feedback on, the compensation isn't the holdup, it's the title. I'm not comfortable just changing the title at this point. I think we need to think on that a little bit more, outside of what's presented before you. So, yes, if we want to do more work on this, that's fine, but, yeah, I don't know about just saying, okay, we'll approve it as a deputy supervisor. I think we need to think about that a little bit more.
And I want to say that while I see this as a potential trajectory, or that, well, I'll just pause there. I think that this intention was to bring before the board a recognition of the work that is being generated by this position, to acknowledge it in their job description and compensate them according to the higher level of work that they are providing to the township. That's the nuts and bolts.
At what point did we discover that the person fulfilling this role had been exceeding the, expectations?
Well, probably about 6 months into the position, I would say. This position was being delegated tasks that were outside of the realm of the original intent of the coordinator, yes.
So why didn't we do this in our budgeting session? If we already knew that we were bursting the seams of this role? I don't know,
Because
it doesn't feel right.
Well, no, at our budgeting session last year, did we change the title before we budgeted last year? I don't think we did. I think it might have changed from executive assistant to operations coordinator after we budgeted. I think we brought the job description change back after that. But
how far away from the pay grade, if the issue is we need to compensate for work that's being done, there's no quarrel here, there's no issue. I don't want to change into a management role.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I would play devil's advocate
Yeah,
a little
please.
and say, I don't think it's appropriate to change the pay grade, keeping the job description the same.
Right.
Because we have that's one thing that we want to do with the Siegel study, is align those positions. So
What
I-
I'm hinting at more of is take the title
Yep.
the same, expand kind of what you've got here within the operations coordinator, and then review your pay grade. If you need to give this gentleman or person a raise and your pay grade doesn't support it, fine. But if we're gonna start going down this road, this is different than just making sure we're describing the work people are doing
Yeah,
accurately, in my opinion. This is,
yeah.
Trustee Cole's online, wants to speak.
Yeah, thank you. So I am also in agreement with Trustee Ford and Trustee Sikora that I think we need more conversation on this because especially in light of the fact that we did do the study and we did bring our pay rates up to, the average, why is this position now all of a sudden requiring more duties? How did we not foresee that? And I mean, are we opening the door to, everybody that we hire, doing anything outside of what the job description was, now is expecting a title differentiation, a pay raise? I mean, I think we worked hard and I fully support paying people, especially employees that do the important work for our township, what they appropriately should be compensated for. But this seems very sudden, and I feel like it needs more conversation. And yeah, I'm not comfortable voting yes on this tonight.
So are we talking about possibly tabling this until we can have a more fleshed out discussion at the board retreat?
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, I think we need more time, and I think we need, in my opinion, to overall discuss, okay, this could happen in other roles that we hire, right? So let's hash out what we need, not just the titles, the positions that we, put out there that we need to fill. Is that really what we need to fill, or do we need a management position? You know what I mean? Because now we're in this position because we hired somebody to do a job, and these were the job descriptions, and then this person came on, and all of a sudden, we're asking them to do a lot more than they hired in at. So I want to be fair, but I think we also need to look at making sure that we know what we need before we do the hiring process and give people titles and say these are our expectations and these are your job duties. So yes, I think we need more conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll table this. We've got our board retreat coming up, and so then we'll kind of have that conversation and then bring it back at some point after that. Okay. Okay, next we move on to item 11, which is the resolution regarding employee handbook revisions, section 6.1, safety and security.
All right, me again. You have seen this policy before. We've attempted to revise it. There was some background, there was conversation. This was quite a while ago. We needed to clarify this in one of the internal security section. There was some confusion on who can come behind the counter, what's an elected official, boards and committees. So we cleaned that up a bit. Ultimately, it's anyone on township business, an employee, we wear the badges. We have visitors badges, so visitors are identifiable, and no visitor will be behind the counter unattended. Unless they're, a contractor cleaning the windows, but they would be a known entity. So essentially, meetings with the public will be held in that small conference room right off the lobby, which is currently happening. Again, we got these badges a couple years ago, but we never formalized what people are supposed to do with them. So put it in the policy that employees and elected officials will wear their badges when on township property to be identifiable. We also enhanced our field safety section. We wanted to just really outline interactions in the parks and how to present yourself when you're on township business out in the public interacting with members of the public. So that is the revision to the safety and security. Those are the revisions to the safety and security policy.
I have a question about
Sure.
E. It says off-site field rules of conduct. While performing assigned task off-site or in the field, employees are expected to limit personal or social interactions with members of the public. Is there something that brought that up? Is there, I was just kind of concerned about the wording of that.
Yeah, I actually read through that when I was sitting over there too. So if you keep, no, I would say there wasn't anything that was groundbreaking that initiated this. Our maintenance department is in the parks a lot, and they encounter a variety of different people in the parks. It's not a secret that we've had some unhoused encampments in the parks. So we really wanted to outline, as our maintenance department is out there mowing, what is the expectation for you to address those situations when you come across them? And the expectation is you don't. You call the police. If there's something going on, you rely on the deputies in the township to handle interactions like that. So no, I would say we needed to enhance that a bit to make sure that our staff is clear on what they should be doing when they encounter something undesirable in the parks, I suppose.
I'm just still concerned because I want our staff to have some social interactions with members of the public.
Absolutely.
We all work for members of the public, and the way it's worded, it just, it rubs me wrong, and I still have some concerns about it.
I'm not
I
clear on
don't
which
know.
part you're talking about that rubs you wrong.
It's just where it says, expected to limit personal or social interactions with members of the public. I understand we don't want people on their phone, but we do want people to have social interactions with members of the public. I don't know if we're trying to, I just didn't understand what we were trying to prevent with that. I just need some
I had the
clarification.
same thing when I read it. That kind of just perked up. It felt a little heavy, a little
Yeah.
strange. I understand exactly what you're saying now, and reading it 5 or 6 times now, it's not as intense. But both myself and my assistant both asked the same question: did something happen?
Yeah.
That seems heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So, good question.
Yep.
Reading it again, I think I'm okay with it. I understand its intention.
Yeah, because it does go on to say, provide responses related to safety, security in the park, but avoid those prolonged conversation, debates, or activities unrelated to work, because you are representing the township out there. So, yeah, like I said, when I was over there reading it, I was like, ooh, and then I kept reading, I was like, okay, that's where we were going.
Yeah, and I completely understand the debates and things like that. Absolutely, I get that. I was just concerned if there was something more.
No. Would you like us to revise the language a bit? I think if you continue to read the entire section there, it kind of brings it together a bit better. But no, I think it's important for us to make sure that the expectations are clear for our staff. So we want to make sure that they are comfortable and prepared to handle situations and know what they should and should not do.
I see Trustee Cole has her hand raised.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, so I also questioned this when I read it over, and, for the record, I'm all for the changes to security in our space. That's actually what I do currently in my full-time job. I do physical security, so I have to make decisions on, vetting people that come into our workspace, and I'm 100% for physical safety in our workspace, but when I got to E, it really did feel like an overreach. And I also questioned, did something happen that I'm not aware of? But it seems to me not only like an overreach, the way that it's worded, employees are expected to limit personal or social interactions with members of the public. I mean, that to me seems so against we're supposed to be, we represent the public, first of all. So it seems very against what we are here to do. I do understand that in the current climate, there might be some situations. So I would like to see language changed in that section to not limit people to what personal conversations they can have, because of course, we all have personal conversations at work that are completely unrelated to work a lot of times, right? That's okay, but I would like to see the language reflect something more about employees would not display any harassing, combative, or agitated conduct that brings discredit upon or reflects poorly upon the township. And number two, while engaging in conversation with the members of the public, they not portray themselves and their personal opinions as being representative of the mission, values, or goals of the township as a whole, or as the township board as a whole. I feel like there needs to be a clarification there. I don't feel like we need to be Big Brother restricting people's conversations and or opinions as long as they are not representing the township as a whole.
Okay. So, thank you for your feedback. I can certainly take this away and work on that section and bring it back for you again, if you'd like.
I'm okay with what you've got here. I had my concerns reading them. Your explanation has alleviated them. So I couldn't support this tonight. The only comment I would say is, we just want to make sure the community is, our deputies feel comfortable shooting baskets with kids that they're in the neighbor policing. And Greg Fountain's kicking the ball back to the kids on the soccer field at Fletcher Field, right?
Sure.
Approachable, kind, human. I think that's all people want. I'm willing to make the motion to approve these.
Is there any other conversation before we go down that road? Trustee Chapman?
I just think that, I understand it, but I think tweaking it, I really like Trustee Cole's suggestions. And I think that there's no hurry to do this tonight, making those changes, just clarifying it, limiting political speech. That should not occur, obviously. I think revising that isn't going to delay anything significantly. I don't think there's a rush to this, but I think clarifying that would be just better for our employees and make just a warmer environment. I think we can do better.
Fair. Table it and bring it back if that's what you guys want to do?
Yeah,
edit
and
it
I
here?
think you can.
Yes, I agree. I will not support this tonight.
Yep. We can bring it back to the next meeting and just, if that's the change, we can put it on the consent agenda, and you can review.
It's very nice beyond,
Thank you.
even though it was good. I liked it all. It was great. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I think you're kind of stuck in this, while you're just reading the word, not you, but, anybody in the audience, anybody else looks at it, it's like, or I could see an employee being out there going, no, I'm following this thing here, and then
Yeah.
people are going, what the heck, that's, very restrictive, I just wanted to ask you how you're doing, or whatever. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with his job, person's job, but
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, you can have the you as HR person or the supervisor can have the discussion, this is what it really means, and we're having this conversation, well, that's not what it means, it really means this, but that is not necessarily how someone else is going to read it who's just getting this. But you're kind of, I think you're kind of stuck in how do you word it that way?
Yeah, right.
And that's.
We can figure it out.
Yeah, it's like, if you can, great, please
Yeah.
do.
Let me give it a shot.
The meeting minutes reflect that you will figure it out.
Thanks, Dusty. Thank you so much for locking me into that.
Yeah, you can pick up Trustee Cole's comments
Is it a
directly
will
off
or
of the
shall?
video
Yeah.
too, so you can reference that back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, next we have two budget amendments. The first, Ms. Horner, will you present this to the board, please?
I sure can, because I want to go through the dates. So as the board
probably knows, we have a lot of acronyms. So the KRWWC is the Kalamazoo Regional Water and Wastewater Commission. It is comprised of township members. It was created much before maybe my lifetime, but definitely before my time at the township. And they have been integral in moving forward with a new water agreement first with the city of Kalamazoo, who operates the system. And then we are, I'm going to say 90%, Sherry, through the wastewater agreement. And so as we wrap that up, we had a meeting a few weeks ago with that group, and they are finalizing their upcoming budget because we all have to pick different fiscal years. And so theirs is from April 1st to March 31st of the following year. So in the memo where it says approve a special assessment of $12,000 for fiscal year '26, it's fiscal year '25 still for them until next Tuesday. And then they also voted to adopt the fiscal '26 dues, which would start April 1st of '26 and run till March 31st of '27. Not to be confused with our budget or MDOT's budget, the state budget, or anybody else's. So I just wanted to point that out. And this was largely related to the serious push to get the wastewater agreement done this year. There are some impending deadlines that want to be incorporated into that contract for compliance with some of the standards, the environmental standards, and some of the treatment standards that have been implemented over the last few years. So we did include, as we do every year, our dues for this group. We were estimating it was $24,500. It's actually going to be $25,000. So this also includes the extra $500. Again, for the upcoming fiscal year for the regional commission, it's all within our current budget year. So that totals $12,500, and we are proposing to pay it all from the sewer fund because this is majority sewer related to get that agreement done. And this was applied to the 4 largest member municipalities of the regional commission. And I know Supervisor Bell and Trustee Sikora were both there, if you want to add any other thoughts. And I included the draft minutes from the meeting. So Anna is accurate when she reports that there has been a tremendous amount of work. Attorney Porter also has been heavily involved to get this wastewater contract to a place where it can be brought back to the township, and then we will work on, and then it will create the path towards equalized rates for all users of the system. It is beyond just the extra professional work to get it to this point. I will say that some of that extra work was created by our own capital projects, because as we move forward with sewer phase 1 and sewer phase 2, that required for the negotiating team many more hours to make sure that how capital projects are going to be treated within the contract will be recognized and fair. I mean, Jim, do you have anything extra to add to that?
No, I think there's been a lot of work done. There have been a lot of things accomplished. I really do think we're very, very close to achieving a long-term solution. And I can't give the Regional Commission enough credit for the work that's been done and the effort that's been put in to get us to a point where hopefully our citizens generally will be treated just like the citizens in the city. So.
Okay. Any other questions on this budget amendment? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment for the KRWWC dues for $12,500 as listed in the memo.
Support.
A motion by Trustee Sikora, support by Trustee Ford. guess before we move this, I'm going to take some public comment. At this time, I'll take a pause. Does anyone have public comment regarding this budget item? Seeing no public comment, I will close public comment. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have our chief here with us to discuss Oshtemo Fire Department budget amendment, a grant opportunity for these really expensive radios.
Yes.
Serious expense.
So as you can see, Kalamazoo County Consolidated Dispatch is trying to upgrade all of the radios for the public safety agencies in Kalamazoo County to 800. Now, they're also, the police departments are already on 800, but there's a certain encryption that they have to meet, that some of them don't have all that. So they're included in this grant. There's been $4 million advocated or given this year, and with the plan of another $4 million next year. That's why I'm coming to you now, is because we want to get a jump start on this and make sure we get into it, just in case something bad happens and they don't fund it the next year. Motorola gave us, they found out what was going on and said, whoa, we need to stay in this county. We want to give you some really good discounts. They gave 40% off of their radio equipment, which drastically dropped the price. Dispatch is giving us so much per radio, and we gave them an inventory of our VHF radios 2 years ago and said, this is what we have for VHF, so that's what they use to say this is how many 800s you'll get. In that meantime, we have already purchased a couple 800s, 11 of them. Dispatch is going to reimburse us 70% for 9 of them that were bought in 2025, and then drops to 65% for the ones that were bought in 2024. So we'll get funding for those back from Dispatch. This is kind of a shuffle game right here. So we're going to ask for this money, the $288,000, so I can make a purchase order, get the radios ordered, and then once that is complete, I can go to Dispatch and say, got the radios ordered, purchase order, everything's done. Dispatch will cut us a check. We'll probably have the check from Dispatch in our account before the radios ever come in. But I got to do this money shuffle to make the accountants happy. In the end, when everything is said and done, we will have to pay $37,890.78 for $288,000 worth of radios. So I look forward to a yes vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I just want to, I mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. This is the budget amendment where it says from GL 206-0004,000 Fire Fund carryover. That should read GL 211-000-40,000 fire equipment.
Yes.
So that is the text change I was referring to earlier.
And Chief, this supports disaster response if there were ever a countywide disaster, correct?
County or statewide even, yes.
Because we would all be on the same networks, and unlike in the past, we would actually be able to communicate with everybody.
Fingers crossed, yes.
Chief, will all of the traffic then that uses these 800 megahertz frequencies be encrypted?
No,
Okay.
only the police channels.
Okay.
And the police have channels that are unencrypted, so if we have an emergency together, we can switch to an unencrypted channel where we can talk together.
Okay, but like the dispatch from 911 Consolidated Dispatch, those calls routing you guys will not be encrypted necessarily?
Not to us.
Okay,
Correct.
all right, just wanted to understand.
Would there be additional cost for any additional coding?
That is in here at the bottom of the spreadsheet, Rocom programming fees of $5,150.
Okay.
Trustee Cole, do you have comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here that to me, this is a no-brainer. This is an absolute yes. I mean, it is imperative that we get our radio systems up to par with being able to speak to all of the surrounding jurisdictions when we have a multi-jurisdictional event. Extremely important, and to walk away from that with $37,000 out of pocket is, to me, a no-brainer. So yes, I'm fully in support of this.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Chief? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this budget amendment? No? Okay. Can go ahead and go into board deliberation or a motion if anyone feels.
I move to approve the fire department budget amendment for the 800 megahertz radio system as presented.
I'll support that with the correction to the line, GL line, thank you.
Motion by,
Well, I thought you said the
motion
memo.
by trustee Ford, support by trustee Sikora. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Kristen, I didn't catch you. Okay. Very good. All right, motion carries 7-0, or I'm sorry, any noes? Motion carries 7-0. All right. Okay. Next, we have item 13, if I'm getting this right, let me get back here.
Second reading for the general ordinance.
Yes, I just want to make sure I'm.
I think you inserted the consent agenda C after the budget amendments.
Okay, very good. Yep. Next, we have the second reading of General Ordinance Number 156, the hawkers and peddlers and solicitors.
Again, you should have a red line version, and I would like to note for the board that apparently, unbeknownst to legal, when certain documents get pulled from a PDF to a Word, your red line version goes away. That's what happened last time. I've typically always given this board a red line version of every ordinance that we look at. So it was unfortunate that that was deleted last time. But this red line version incorporates also the suggestions that we had from the public with regard to only addressing enforcement for a nonprofit or using the, requiring the clerk to file with the township clerk or ordinance enforcement officer the name of the person running that nonprofit organization. So other than that, everything else as discussed at the last meeting.
Any questions for Attorney Porter?
I have a couple. Can we add additional wording? Because having the name, but should we also have name and contact information for that person in case we needed to call to see if a said child was a member of that organization? It says the name of the person in charge, but we would also need the name and contact information of that.
That would be
It's a
appropriate.
Small change.
Yeah.
And then another hiccup I envision is if somebody has received permission, received the license, should it be mentioned that that license be prominently displayed so as to ease enforcement of this? Because we could easily provide a copy, it would be there on scene, and if whoever's investigating a complaint would be able to quickly and easily see that the clerk has provided, or designee has provided that license.
It's possible, I mean, you certainly could do that. It wouldn't be necessary for the purposes for which we were asked to make the request. In this case, basically, the officers are primarily focusing on some illegal and illicit activity. And if they're able to simply ask the person in charge, do you have the appropriate license? And they can check with the clerk as indicated last time. I don't know that it's necessary that they display it.
Well, I was thinking a hypothetical, if this is, 6 p.m., it would be difficult to check that. If they had it in their hand or a copy thereof, it would be able to at least be quickly verified. because there are going to be some times that the clerk or the clerk's office wouldn't be available. And I didn't want to push this from, they're doing it during business hours, now we just do it after business hours. And
Well,
I didn't
if-
know if it was a problem or not, or if it would help.
So when I get a request for a hawkers, peddlers, or solicitor's license, one copy goes to the solicitor, and then one copy goes to our ordinance enforcement, and one copy goes to the sheriff's deputies.
Okay.
So they have all of that up front, so they'll be able to match up what I've given them with what the solicitor actually carries with them.
Okay, very good. The other question I had, give me just a moment here. Unfortunately, I scribble, and I can't sometimes read my own writing. Duly appointed representatives, it's a vague term. Do we need to do anything about that for clarification? It is, let me see the sentence here. It is,
Says the requirement shall not apply to charitable religious organizations that are considered nonprofit, that is, to get the actual license, or a duly appointed representative soliciting donations on behalf of the same. Again, I think when they come in and they register, this is for registration. I would, again, believe the clerk's office will determine who the duly appointed representative is at that point.
my question would be, could a individual come in and say they're representing that? Would we have a way to know if they were actually? So if I came and said I was representing religious organization A, is there a way to verify that they're actually, that I am representing organization A?
Depends on whether they got it online or not. No, seriously, I understand your point, but I think most of the local organizations that contact us have emails, letterhead, business cards, those types of things. So typically, I don't think it's been a problem in the past. I guess Dusty could tell us whether or not it has.
Just to be clear, how this usually goes down is we get contacted by an organization that's telling us why they don't need to get a hawkers and peddlers license. That's usually how it starts. But going from there, I usually just take a business card from them and I'll staple it to the permit.
And the last question I had was just how many of these do we actually permit?
I have none right now.
Okay.
There are no solicitor's licenses out there.
So
Yeah.
less than what there actually are.
I honestly anticipate the changes we made in this ordinance will have little or no effect on the true bona fide parties soliciting charitable donations. What we hope that has is a direct impact on those that are stealing other people's products and trying to sell them in front of the other stores. So that's the goal, that's the hope.
That's all I had, thank you.
So I was keeping a list, so you wanted to insert name and contact number.
Contact information. That's
Information,
appropriate.
yeah. The license question has been resolved regarding,
Yeah, and I think the display issue has been resolved too, because they should, obviously, when it's issued,
right.
Dusty will indicate, you should keep this with you while you're soliciting.
Okay, is there any other conversation on this item? No? Is the board going to want a new red line copy in a future board meeting to include the contact information language?
We could simply send it out to the board
In email.
in an email. In other words, if you moved it as amended by Mr. Chapman, I would send out an email saying, here's the final language of the ordinance.
Trustee Chapman?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. It's a small change, so I don't think that it's a substantive change, so I think that would be fine.
Okay, any other conversation? All right, at this time, I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on item 13? I will close public comment. We can move into board deliberation or a motion if someone's ready.
I'll make a motion to accept the amended general ordinance number 156 as discussed.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Are we on hawkers, peddlers? That's
Oh.
122, isn't it?
No, 156.
No, the second reading for ordinance 689, its compiled general ordinance section is 156.
Oh,
I
got
know
it.
that's very confusing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, I see it there.
No, I'm just reading what the motion was in the memo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Hold on just a little bit to the,
Oh, okay, down there.
right here, it's general.
Yeah, you have ordinance numbers and you have compiled sections in it.
So I was reading the memo, what was in the memo, and it didn't say that.
It skipped the general
Yeah,
number,
okay.
that's all. Yep.
Well, I'll support whatever it was that you just read, with trustee Chapman's revision or suggestion.
Okay, motion by Clerk Farmer, support by Trustee Sikora. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we return to item C, 9C from the consent agenda, and this was a question from Trustee Chapman.
Yeah, so it was just a small question, but it listed FOIA request, and I was kind of confused how dispatch or 911 or how police were involved in FOIA requests. I was just confused how they would be involved then.
That's FOIA's to them.
Okay, that's a simple clarification. Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay.
It was a very good question, and I say that because I went on their website to find out why there were FOIA requests, and they explain how who would use it and call them to get it with a FOIA request. So, good thinking, I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that satisfy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
It was just a small question.
Okay. Next, we can move to item 14.
We gotta move that first.
We don't need to approve it. It's just
No, that-
information.
Yeah, it was just informational.
Oh,
There's
sorry, it's on
nothing
the
to do,
agenda, so-
except for read it,
Fair enough.
soak it in, get ready for the police presentation at our next board meeting. Topics for board discussion. These are items that I've been placing on the agenda just to, items that may need some progress updates. At our last board meeting, there was a root cause analysis regarding what happened with the missing SADs and in our BSNA programming. Just wanted to report back that the assessor, the treasurer, the clerk, the supervisor, the attorney's office all met to start that conversation, along with the operations coordinator, Mr. Cobb, who created the framework for the root cause analysis that we're going to be forming or walking through. And so that is getting, that is rolling, and Claire is taking point on that project. So she can be responsible for reporting out whatever happens next. Next, included in the packet is just an update, and I don't know exactly, I feel like it's a cart, horse, chicken, egg thing. So I put the quote in there. We had a conversation, I don't know if it was at last board meeting and the board meeting before. Trustee Ford came in and met with our maintenance director along with a professional and discussed what it would take to do some EV charging stations here at Township Hall. The quote is in there merely just to give you a taste for what the investment would be if we were going to install. I believe there's 3, this quote is, would be for 3 charging stations. So it's just to put that number in your mind. It also does not include, I got a message from the maintenance director, it actually doesn't include some piece of equipment, the actual the station itself or something, there's like,
It'd be what you know as the charger or the electric vehicle servicing equipment, EVSE, the charger. Yeah.
they're roughly $800 a piece, so in
More or
addition,
less, but yeah.
600 to 800. And so that would be an additional, so that's not included in this quote, just so that you know. So this, I think, is going to come back to the Cemeteries, Buildings, and Grounds Committee for discussion, which I talked to the maintenance director. There was discussion about what locations would be available, and those locations all have different costs. So if we went to tie into the west side of the building, that would be more expensive than tying into the east side of the building, just based on the electrical capacity that's available in those different places. Of course, we have the vehicle garage project coming up. The fencing project is coming up, and then that would mean trenching across the street, and which would be even more expensive. So I was hoping Cemeteries, Buildings, and Grounds would talk through those different options and then bring back a recommendation to the board.
Yes, that's fair. I could tell you from the site evaluation that the three of us performed, it was very evident that they would make no sense whatsoever for us to install these in the facilities on the west end for maintenance or off of the main that's at the township office because of the trenching required to get to the parking lot. So the actual site that was identified as suitable would be the east side of the fire station hall. There's a main inside the fire station. We could run a couple to outside parking and then one inside that 3-bay garage for the chief's vehicle. So there was 3 sites evaluated, but only 1 considered. If there's gonna be further consideration, like there would be like meter service upgrades that would be required out at the maintenance garage, for example. There would be considerable directional boring required to tie into the Township Hall main to have them work this location. So it doesn't mean they're not doable, but for bang for buck and availability of parking, the fire station was the location.
I don't know, yeah, I mean, I know that's what came out of that meeting, I'm just, if you want us to move forward with doing an RFP for the installation, and, it's a pretty sizable chunk, and it would require, and, well, I'm not it probably would require a budget amendment of some sort, which I haven't sort of vetted yet, but I wasn't really sure the board was ready to make a decision about location, but I'm open to other opinions.
Well, I think this was just part of the puzzle, because the other questions that other people had raised were maintenance cost for gasoline versus electric, performance. I know there was some other questions out there. I think this is a part of a bigger puzzle that has to all come together before we can definitively make a decision on it. Because I know that, I think it was Trustee Cole brought up the maintenance cost and performance degradation with temperature and things like that. So I think there's some other questions that have to be answered that before we can make a decision on anything. And I wouldn't want to make a decision to install something before we've made the decision to really go forward with doing it.
So there's one hiccup in this whole thing is we have departments that are waiting to purchase vehicles. And so, and so the longer this goes on, the longer departments are using their own personal vehicles for work. And some of those vehicles are not, their personal vehicles aren't necessarily appropriate. And then the other thing is the maintenance director has provided a lot of background information regarding, and there's a truck for maintenance in this year's budget to be purchased, and an electric or a hybrid vehicle, I'm not sure makes sense for the maintenance department, based on that information. So I guess, we can move forward and provide some more context around the things that you just mentioned, the cost, the maintenance, the gas versus electric, but we need to make some decisions. There's been David's done a whole bunch of research on the vehicles that are available, the types of vehicles, the cost. Department heads are looking at those options about what might work for them, so, anyway, we need to take some action.
Yeah, so this is also questions that I had asked at a few meetings ago, but also months ago, like cost of purchase versus purchase, maintenance versus maintenance, repair versus repair, and insurance versus insurance.
Purchase, do you mean purchase versus?
Gas versus electric.
Yeah, I remembered that one. You mean purchase versus, not rental, what's it called, lease?
No.
She's
No,
saying purchase
buying
of gas, purchase of
versus
electric.
buying
Oh,
electric.
okay.
The overall
The
total
insurance for both,
cost.
the maintenance for both, like, things like battery expectancy and, you know, are we replacing $9,000 of batteries in 5 years kind of thing?
Okay,
Do we have a policy, like a purchasing policy, where we would need to have more than one quote
We would,
eventually?
3
Mark?
is
Okay.
the standard, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, this would be like a whole new,
Yeah.
you know, so, all right, well, I will try to figure out how to get this information back in front of you pretty soon, because people are chomping at the bit
Yeah.
to move forward. And the other thing is the My Deal cars, the number of electric and hybrid cars that are available through the My Deal program is quite limited, and they also sell quickly, like they're not always available, like they allot a certain number, so, all right, well, that's the update on where we're at. I just wanted to get some more conversation going, and so get it to the next place. So I think with that, we've gotten through all of the agenda items with the exception of public comment. And so at this time, now is your time to come forward and share your thoughts and comments with the board.
I'm curious, when you were talking about this electric charger station, we go to Flesher Park a lot, and they had a charging station there. We saw several people using it throughout the last year, and now it's sitting there like somebody tried to pull it out with first it had a big bag over it, and
The company
then,
that runs the network went out of business. It doesn't work anymore.
so all the money to install it and put all the,
Well,
and
all of the infrastructure is still good, but the vendor that serviced the capability isn't. So there is something has to happen.
so how do you prevent that from happening to whatever you want to install over here? I mean, how great are these things? I mean, are they going to last, or is it just going to go out of business in a year? I mean, I don't know. It all seems like too new stuff to me. I like, just put gas in the tank and you can go, you know? I don't know.
Thank you, Danita. Is there any other public comments?
Ken Schneider, resident of Van Cal. Regarding the charging stations, it sounds like a couple of these are going to be on the outside of the building. And unless they're like some previous charge point system that went out of business that we had over at Fletcher Field, what's going to stop the general public from charging their cars for free? Are we looking at the EVSEs that we're going to be purchasing? Will those be on some type of network or have some type of card? And I don't know how the township takes care of like allocating fuel between the different departments. But unless you have some type of card system like you do for fuel cards, it's going to be hard to track the charging expenses and allocate those back to departments. So I think that takes you out of your $600 to $800 EVSEs and puts you into something in a different category. So that probably requires a little more investigation. If departments are chomping at the bit to buy vehicles, maybe they need to make decisions based on the policies in place. I mean, if somebody has a need, we need to take care of that need. Going back to the manager job description discussion, I know in my field, working in private industry, anytime that we have a exceptional performer, we're conscious to note that at their review. It seems like last year we moved everybody to the top of their pay brackets, so there may not be much room to move this person based on that. Employee certificate of recognition summary that was in the agenda packet. I didn't notice any recognition for this individual, so that might be another opportunity to recognize them for their great work. And then I'm curious if the township has a bid policy on something like this EV charger project. I noticed a company that was quoted is out of Grand Rapids. We have electricians like Esper Electric that are right here in the township. I want to make sure that we're considering local businesses when we're looking at projects like this. I know the county as a whole has a preference to locally owned businesses, so I would encourage the township to look at those options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Anyone else wishing to make public comment this evening? Okay. This time, I'll close public comment, and we can move into board member comments and committee updates. Mr. Ford.
No additional comments tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
The Planning Commission met, as we discussed earlier. We moved to bring the master plan forward to the board, and that is my report.
Okay. Trustee Sikora?
Yeah, thank you. Esper Electric is actually in Alamo Township. It's not in Oshtemo. But I do want to say that your question about purchasing is very important, because at the last County Board of Commissioners meeting, that became an issue for awarding, and maybe you're familiar with that, because I was talked with people from Esper about how the county wasn't following their own policies. So it's very important to make sure we do that, which is why I tried to mention that. Okay, anyway, today I virtually attended the Road Commission meeting, very informative, and they approved our contract for our roads. Last Wednesday, I attended our bi-monthly Parks Committee meeting. We reviewed the final draft of the interpretive signage for the Fruit Belt Trail and received construction updates on the trail. Parks Director Street noted that she had applied for a $5,000 grant from the M-Parks Play is Essential Fund towards our planned replacement of the X-Wave playground structure with a more accessible and interactive structure. And she further noted that we were awarded $10,000 because they were impressed with our application, apparently. So that's definitely a good chunk going towards that replacement. We reviewed a draft RFP for master plan development for Flesher Field and Drake Farmstead Park. We also reviewed numerous upcoming events. The next one, hopefully, that people will be able to attend will be Saturday, April 25th, from 10 to 11 a.m. at Drake Farmstead Park, and it's going to be a garlic pull. There's a lot of garlic mustard to pull there. Last Thursday, Maintenance Director Greg Fountain and I met with OCBA landscape designer Molly Page to move forward on the flagpole project that we've talked about in the past, and we're hoping to receive a draft plan in the very near future. On Saturday morning, I volunteered at Flesher Field for our very first Choose Your Park spring trash sweep to clear most of the blown-in winter litter from both Flesher Field and Oshtemo Township Park. We had students from the WMU Aviation Fraternity helping, and we were using supplies from the Community Homeworks Tool Library, and also safety vests from the Kalamazoo Conservation District. And that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sikora. Trustee Cole, do you have anything you want to share?
I do, thank you. So we had a very informative and I thought productive police committee meeting recently. As instructed, I did reach out to see if former Kalamazoo Township Police Chief Brian Ergang would share some of his knowledge with us at our next meeting. I've learned that he does travel a lot. However, I have been assured that the new police chief for Kalamazoo Township, Scott Jackson, will be more than willing to come to our next meeting or one of our next meetings in place of him to kind of share some of that knowledge. Scott Jackson just finalized the contract with Parchment that the township has. So I think that he has a lot of good information to share. So that's good. I also want to say that I did watch the Planning Commission meeting video. And I want to state for the record that I feel like there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding about the perceptions of what the board as a whole is in agreement about as far as how we best proceed to protect our residents when it comes to best facilities and energy facilities as a whole. While we did agree to pursue locating experts to help guide us in the event that we need to create an ordinance, whether that's a WIO or a CREO, I am still fully in alignment with that is a smart thing to do. However, I don't feel that there was any agreement that that was the only avenue that we would pursue in order to figure out how to best protect ourselves and our residents with this, current climate with these facilities potentially coming into our township. I believe that we need to have a balanced approach, a thorough investigation before we make any decision about how we're going to approach this. We have a moratorium that is going to end probably quicker than we expect it to. And again, I will go back to my former career in what it means to do a thorough investigation. That means that the investigation should be thorough and balanced. We should have information from all sides of the situation. We need to have all of the information. We don't need to make a decision on what we're going to do before we have all of that information. And I will reiterate again the request that I've made and that Michael, Trustee Chapman has made at the Planning Commission, that we form an energy committee. I don't care what you call it, but it should be a balanced committee that can go out and do the legwork, do the investigations for us, give us the information that we don't have time to do. And I'm not a lawyer, okay? But I do believe that other jurisdictions have done this and have done it in a way where it doesn't open us up to potential legal problems. I feel that, in my research anyway, as long as we form a committee that has no authoritative power, they're not even necessarily an advisory board. They are literally doing the legwork for us, bringing that information, so much information that they're already doing and they already have, bringing it to not the Planning Commission, but the Oshtemo Township Board, our board, giving us the information, and then we decide whether we give that information to the Planning Commission. And again, I do believe we need residents on that board that are invested, but we also need a balanced board. We need people who are going to facilitate productive conversations, challenge ideas, concepts. We need to collaborate. Again, I will reiterate my request that we are collaborating with other municipalities and local jurisdictions and what they're doing, what they have learned. I 100% believe that we need to do everything that we can, gather all of the information that we can, not just decide what we're going to do before we have all of that information. I don't feel that there is any negative impact of forming an energy committee that has no authoritative, I guess, authority to make any decisions, but to help us do the legwork. The prosecutor's office in a criminal trial will go out and hire people to do these investigations for them. They pay them. Hey, we don't have time to focus just solely on this, so go out and research this and bring us back what you have. We have people here that are, I can't see because I'm remote, but that are probably still in the audience that have been doing that legwork and those investigations for free. They are willing to come tell us what they've learned for free. And again, it needs to be balanced. I get it. But I will state again that I hope that we can form some type of committee to not only gather the information that we need in order to make a thorough investigative decision with all of the information, but also to be completely transparent about how we're doing it. And I hope that the rest of this board will take that into consideration, and that is all.
Thank you, Trustee Cole. Treasurer Bushka.
All right, one thing I made a mental note of, and I do understand it was related to Bess and not what I'm about to speak of specifically, but Attorney Porter, correct me if I'm wrong or even a little bit wrong. But earlier it was mentioned that we have a rule, or the state has a law that you can't have a fire within
1,400 feet.
1,400 feet. That did not include your campfires. That was an open burn. So you could still have your campfire, so I wanted to fix that before I kept going with my thing.
And it's also off of specific, so municipal boundaries, like the city of Kalamazoo and Oshtemo. So, not, it only affects municipal boundaries. It's not internal.
Okay. On a treasurer note, so we completed our settlement last week with the county, so that is all done. We are settled and evened out. We still are waiting for a check for them for their, the properties that were delinquent, and so they'll balance us out with that, and so that's still to come, but residents can now make payments with the county who weren't able to make them before we handed those over, so if anybody calls, they can be referred to the county to make the payment now. And this week, we are also in a pre-audit phase, so still busy, but we're getting through that, and I don't know if the clerk's going to talk more about that, but it's been pretty smooth so far. And I have a public media meeting on Thursday, so nothing to report on that today.
Thanks. Clerk Farmer?
Thank you. Yeah, really nothing to report on the pre-audit. We're doing it, and we're providing documents when requested, and it's going very smoothly, actually. The Election Commission met today, just before this meeting, to consolidate precincts 4 and 7 for the May 5th election and to approve election workers. I'm still taking applications for election workers for August and November, and again, I do need more Republicans, so that's my request out to the community. We are currently processing ballots, and they will be available to the public on Monday, and we will also be mailing out ballots on Monday. And that's all I have.
Busy, busy, busy time. From the supervisor's office, I don't have a ton of updates right now. I think we talked about a lot of things during our board discussion. I do want to share a little bit about the communication that happens around all of our staff are compensated at the top of their pay bracket. I want to remind the board what we did as a part of that compensation study. Is an outside consultant was obtained, and we submitted all of our job descriptions at that time to the consultant. And the desired outcome was that people working for Oshtemo Township would be compensated at a level that was like our peers in government, and also comparing to some commercial entities were included in that research. And what that research was delivered to the board is that it showed us the top of the pay scale. So, you know, the Public Works Director, sorry, Anna, the Public Works Director, the top through that survey is compensated at $75,000, and for a similar position from a similar community, the bottom of that pay scale is $50,000. And what our board approved was to take the middle between the high and the low, and we created a middle pay grade for our township. So they're not paid at the top of their pay scales, but they're not paid at the bottom. They're paid at the middle, comparing them to comparable positions in other municipalities and private industry. Then, once we decided on what the middle was, we broke that up into 15 steps. And the step, once the board approved that, then the step that of the job description, so we talked about the manager, right? That's a job category number 111, for example. The different jobs were given different category numbers. Based on time of service to the township, what step they came in our new pay grade schedule was determined and approved by the board. And now that process is all in place so that we can use it for performance evaluations. So it is not accurate to say that all Oshtemo staff are paid at the top of the pay grade. What is accurate to say is that we compensate them at the mid-level between the high and the low range based on an independent study. So I just want to clarify that, and anybody that has further questions, I'm glad to have that conversation in more detail with you. All of that information, I don't remember when we approved those documents, but all of the technical information is available in the packets when we were working through that study. And that study, actually, we spent more than a year, all of the research that went into with Siegel, and they're a company that is the type of work that they provide. And secondly, I'm going to state out loud that I'm going to not be supporting forming an independent committee. And while I appreciate the sentiment, I'm going to stand behind the recommendation of Attorney Porter that the Planning Commission is the committee to work through the process, and public comment time is time to take feedback from the residents and information. You're always welcome to communicate with the planning director, but Attorney Porter's recommendation was that the Planning Commission was the committee to take us through the steps to do this. And so I appreciate what Trustee Cole was speaking to, and Trustee Chapman, I appreciate you were trying to get that out on the table at the Planning Commission. But I will not be supporting that as a direction forward. I believe that Attorney Porter's professional advice about how to move through this process to put us in the best legal position forward is accurate, and I will be standing behind that. Lastly, to the members of the board, I just want to share with you that I've had staff come up to me that are afraid to bring an item before this board for consideration. And some of that is related to the pressure of particularly around the battery energy storage and the recall efforts, but some of that is related to the conduct of the members of this body at times as well. So I just want to remind you that not only are we here, we're here to do the business of the township and keep things moving forward, but for those of us that have to sit in the office with the staff who are working as hard as they can and then don't feel confident that they can't bring an item before this body, we are doing them a disservice as a staff. So that's my, I guess, grumpy stillskin last comment of the evening. And with this, it is 8:46, and this meeting is adjourned.